Chapter 248. As everyone madly searched for Prince Qin, the Taoist from the Ying family also started to move. This Taoist was called Qiufengzi, and even though his status in the school of Taoism couldn't compare to the sect master, he was still a core figure. He was quite strong, or else he wouldn't have been so highly regarded by the Ying family. When the myrtle imperial qi had leaked out from Zhao Fu's body, he had immediately sensed that Prince Qin was in the Ying family. However, the Ying family was incredibly big and had many people, so he couldn't sense Prince Qin's exact location. Back then, because the myrtle imperial star had descended, he hadn't dared to do anything out of the ordinary. He didn't plan to report this matter to the Ying family, as it wouldn't benefit him at all. For example, if he reported this to the Ying family and Great Qin's legatee was found, the Ying family would happily welcome him back, while he would offend Great Qin's legatee by revealing his tracks. Offending the king with the most potential in the world wasn't very smart, and it would only hinder his own future. Since Prince Qin wasn't willing to show himself, he definitely had his own plans, and he couldn't disturb his plans. Right now, what he needed to do was to find Prince Qin without being discovered and join his faction. Thinking about how everyone was madly searching for him, and how he had found the mysterious Prince Qin, Qiufengzi couldn't help but feel excited. This was an opportunity that would greatly affect his fate. The Ying family suddenly became quite lively, and countless people congratulated him. The entire Ying family was immersed in joy, as someone who was truly qualified to be called a king had appeared in the Ying family. When the elders from the various branches heard about this, they couldn't stop smiling. Prince Qin had never disappointed them before, and now, they only hoped that he would be able to return to Qin City as soon as possible. Li Wu, or Ying Wu's residence, also became quite lively. Countless upper-class figures congratulated him and tried to curry favor with him. Only the core figures of the Ying family knew Ying Wu's identity, and ordinary people from the Ying family thought that he was Prince Qin. As such, as soon as the myrtle imperial star disappeared, they rushed to Ying Wu's residence. Ying Wu maintained a smile on his face, but his heart was terrifyingly gloomy. He's very clear about his identity as an impostor. The stronger the real Qin's imperial prince is, the more famous he is, and the more humiliating he feels to be an impostor. By now, Ying Wu had developed a trace of hatred towards Prince Qin, and he was enjoying everything that came with his status as Prince Qin. Those nobles who had once been arrogant lowered their heads and tried to curry favor with him, and even goddesses who had once been unattainable stripped naked and climbed into his bed. He definitely didn't want to lose his current status. This time, Ying Shi had completely given up. She didn't want the position of Ying family anymore. She just wanted to develop her faction so that she would have the right to speak in the future. She wouldn't have to be a puppet that others could control. In a simple and unadorned hall, there were many old men with powerful auras sitting in the hall. Below them, there were many young men with extraordinary bearings kneeling on the ground. This group of young men was led by a handsome young man. Most people might not recognize this person, but he had a sword at his waist. The sword was completely golden, as if it was forged from gold. There were images of mountains, rivers, birds, and beasts on the sword, and it gave off a saintly aura. This sword was the Xianyuan sword. The young man was from the Xianyuan clan, and next to him was a woman who was as beautiful as a goddess and gave off a gentle aura. She was from the Nuwa clan, and on the other side was a kind-looking young man from the Shinnon clan. These young men were all representatives of the various clans. Now that the world is about to fall into chaos and a catastrophe is about to descend, you must properly develop a new world. An old man sitting at the center, giving off a dignified aura, said loudly as he looked at the young men below. "We will definitely not let down the clan elders' expectations." The young men below all looked incredibly serious, but there was a trace of joy in their eyes. They had been waiting for this day for a long time, and they could finally go out and explore a new world. The old man gave a few more instructions, and the young men below all listened. In the end, the old man said seriously, "You must treat this person with caution." Hearing this, the young men's expressions were all different. Some were serious, and some were condescending and disdainful. Following this, these people officially appeared in the real world. They would appear in the heaven-awakened world as well, and with their abilities and statuses, they would once again cause chaos in the world. Elsewhere, within a luxurious hall, there were 20 or so beautiful women sitting around a long table, including the superstar Su Yuyen. "Sisters, what do you think we should do in the future?" At the head of the table, a beautiful woman who looked to be in her 30s and gave off a mature aura smiled as she asked. The other women all expressed different opinions. Some people wanted to maintain the status quo and remain neutral. They wanted to focus on business and intelligence gathering and continue to develop in the heaven-awakened world. Some people were not satisfied. Flower Moon had lived like this for thousands of years, and they felt that they needed to change. Some people wanted to establish a Flower Moon empire, which was something that Flower Moon could do with its current strength. The woman at the head of the table looked over the women arguing and looked at Su Yuyen, who had not spoken this entire time. She asked, "Yuyen, what do you think?" Su Yuyen, who had her head lowered, came back to her senses and apologized. "Big sis, I was thinking about Prince Qin's matter. And didn't pay attention to what big sisters were saying." Hearing the words Prince Qin, everyone in the hall fell silent. If no one knew how dangerous Prince Qin was, they would be idiot. "What do you think about Prince Qin's matter then?" the woman at the head of the table asked as she maintained her smile. Su Yuyen's expression became serious as she said seriously, "Prince Qin gives me a very fearful feeling. If Flower Moon offends him, it's possible that we'll be uprooted. Whether it's establishing a kingdom or remaining neutral, I feel that he's incredibly important." These words caused some people to feel quite displeased, and some retorted, "Even though Prince Qin is terrifying, Flower Moon isn't weak at all." They felt that Su Yuyen's words were too much of a threat to Prince Qin. With Flower Moon's current strength, they don't have to fear anyone. Why would they care about Prince Qin? After hearing Su Yuyen and the other women's words, the woman at the head of the table sank into her thoughts. Back in the heaven-awakened world, Zhao Fu returned to the town of Qin. He looked at the center of the town and saw that there was a 1-meter-tall, square, black, and blood-red stone stele engraved with images of countless corpses and giving off a dense bloody aura. This stone stele was the Chaotic World Stone Stele. Chapter 249. 1 war point could be exchanged for 2 gold coins, 2 war points could be exchanged for 200 normal materials, 3 war points could be exchanged for 300 normal equipment, 4 war points could be exchanged for 800 healing pills, and 5 war points could be exchanged for a basic teleportation formation research book. 10 war points could be exchanged for a normal city creation stone, and 11 war points could be exchanged for a normal village's stat. There were many things that could be exchanged for in the Chaotic World Stone Stele, but because it was only a level 0 stone stele, it could only be exchanged for normal grade items. These items were not very attractive to Zhao Fu, but they were very tempting to ordinary people. If one could conquer a small village, they would receive 1 war point, which could be exchanged for 2 gold coins. 2 gold coins were equivalent to 20,000 copper coins, which was equivalent to 200,000 yuan in the real world. 200,000 yuan in the real world was enough to make people's eyes go green with greed. Moreover, this was only the bonus for conquering a village. The true value was the village itself, which included all sorts of resources, money, and people. The value of all of this could make people go crazy and attack the village at all costs. Leveling up a level 0 stone stele to a level 1 stone stele required 20 war points, and leveling up did not cost war points. After looking through the Chaotic World Stone Stele, Zhao Fu went to the town hall to have a look. He found that the 12 metal colossi and imperial ruler's seal had also received a lot of fate and had evolved, making Zhao Fu feel quite happy. The matter this time could be considered to have come to an end here. In the following days, Qin did not make any big movements, and his soldiers were once again split into teams and continued to conquer. The energy stone mine also began to be excavated. With the support of the massive energy stone mine, Qin's grade was no longer restricted. As long as there were corpses with high grade, they could instantly refine them and obtain grade orbs, which could be given to soldiers. As such, Qin's soldiers' grade greatly increased. Seeing that everything had been taken care of, Zhao Fu once again returned to the real world. After returning to the real world, Zhao Fu asked his bodyguard to bring some food back while he opened his computer and looked at the Heaven Awaken World Forum. Seeing that he had become the center of attention, Zhao Fu bitterly smiled. There was a top-tier financial group in the West that was willing to pay $50 billion to buy his location. The various powers are also scrambling to find out his whereabouts. Also, there were some big shots who publicly said that they wanted to meet him. Some female internet celebrities, in order to gain popularity, boldly confessed their love, or posted a few mysterious photos, saying that they had an ambiguous relationship with him, creating some scandals and so on. What made Zhao Fu the most speechless was that this guy, who was known as the #1 bewitching man in Thailand, had yet to give up. It was said that the last time he waited for him for a full 24 hours, he cried his heart out and almost jumped into the river. This time, he started a live broadcast again, waiting for him at the same spot, hoping to win his heart and never be separated until death. This left Zhao Fu speechless. As an ordinary person, even if Zhao Fu walked down the street, no one would give him a second glance. He had never thought that he would have such a day. In the past, if only he had a few million yuan in his life, he would be able to live a comfortable life. It was a pity that he could no longer return to that kind of life. Zhao Fu did not care too much about this, and what shocked Zhao Fu the most was that two large factions had appeared. The ancient clans had not disappeared and still existed. Zhao Fu had no idea that they still existed, as there was almost no information about them. This was because Zhao Fu's strength was limited in the real world, so he did not know about these things. It was said that someone had appeared with the Xianyuan sword, and the #1 sword of the 10 great swords had appeared, causing countless sword fanatics to go crazy. However, there was also news that someone had appeared with the Chiyu blade. Swords represented the path of kings, while sabers represented the path of tyranny. Since ancient times, there had been battles between swords and sabers, which was the clash between the path of kings and the path of tyranny. These battles had lasted for thousands of years. With the 10 great swords there were also the 10 great sabers. 1. Chiyu blade. It was said that the demonic blade used by Chiyu contained an unparalleled demonic might. It was forged from a demonic object from beyond the heavens, and it could rival the Xianyuan sword. 2. Ming Hong blade. It was said that when the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan forged the Xianyuan sword, some of the leftover materials automatically turned into a blade. The blade intent was too powerful, and it devoured its owner. The Yellow Emperor wanted to destroy it, but the blade turned into a red magpie and disappeared into the sky. It was said that it was wielded by a mysterious figure from the demon world. 3. Dragon tooth. One of the 3 great ancient evil weapons. The creator of the blade is unknown, and it was said that the materials used to forge it were all venomous, cursed, and contained the soul of a demonic dragon. Towards the end of the Xia dynasty, it was destroyed by the Xianyuan sword and its fragments were suppressed. 4. Tiger wing. One of the 3 great ancient evil weapons. The creator of the blade is unknown, and it was said that the materials used to forge it were all venomous, cursed, and contained the soul of a ferocious tiger. Towards the end of the Xia dynasty, it was destroyed by the Xianyuan sword and its fragments were suppressed. 5. Dog deity. One of the 3 great ancient evil weapons. The creator of the blade is unknown, and it was said that the materials used to forge it were all venomous, cursed, and contained the soul of a ferocious dog. Towards the end of the Xia dynasty, it was destroyed by the Xianyuan sword, and its fragments were obtained by evil people, who used the essence and blood of 1,000 people to recreate the dog deity. 6. Great Xia Dragon Sparrow, a massive bronze blade created by Emperor Ji of the Xia dynasty. There was an ancient snake totem on the blade, and it was incredibly beautiful. 7. Green Dragon Crescent Blade, a blade that existed in novels. It was wielded by the martial Saint Guan Yu, and it was incredibly powerful and invincible. The real blade only appeared in the Song dynasty. 8. Marquis of Xinting. During the end of the Eastern Han dynasty, when the famous general Zhang Fei of the Three Kingdoms became the Marquis of Xinting, he ordered a blacksmith to forge it from the Scarlet Pearl Mountain iron. Over the years, it has been influenced by righteous qi, and it can attract righteous qi from the heavens and earth, allowing it to slay evil. 9. Chilling Moonblade. It was originally an item that fell from the sky, and it was reforged by Madame Su of the state of Zhao during the end of the Warring States period. It is shaped like a crescent moon and gives off a chilling aura. After being continuously refined with poison, it has become a poisonous blade that can kill on contact with blood, and Jing Ku used it to assassinate the Qin dynasty. 10. Kunwa Blade. It was forged from the stone of the Kunwa mountain in the classic of mountains and seas. It is abnormally sharp and can cut through jade like it was mud. Now that the Xianyuan sword had appeared, the Qiyu blade had also appeared. There would definitely be a ferocious battle between the two of them, and Zhao Fu felt quite expectant. He wanted to see these two legendary weapons clash. Now that these hidden people had entered the real world, they caused a lot of chaos in the real world. The other faction was Flower Moon. Zhao Fu had been curious as to who had created a Heaven Awakened World Forum in such a short period of time and attracted so many people to join. Chapter 250. After looking through all of this, the bodyguard came back with some food. It was a bowl of rice and 2 dishes. Zhao Fu didn't want to stay in the real world, so he hurriedly ate and planned to quickly finish eating before returning to the Heaven Awakened world. Mr. Zhao, your grandpa and grandma want to see you, the bodyguard said as he walked in. Grandpa and grandma? Zhao Fu felt quite confused. Grandpa and grandma normally wouldn't come to find him, and they would call him for some small matters. Why did they come directly this time? Is there something urgent? Let them in, Zhao Fu said before going to wash up. After going to the living room, Zhao Fu looked at the 2 anxious elders and asked caringly, Grandpa, is there something urgent? When they saw Zhao Fu walk out, Zhao Fu's grandma and grandpa hurriedly went up and grabbed Zhao Fu's hand. There were tears in their eyes as they pleaded, Fu heir, this time you must save your cousin and younger cousin. Hearing this, Zhao Fu felt that something troublesome had happened. However, seeing how anxious they were, he comforted them and said, Grandpa and Grandma, don't be so anxious. Tell me what happened in detail, and if I have the ability, I'll definitely help. Zhao Fu had the 2 elders sit on the sofa and listen to them explain what had happened. The situation was like this. There were many talented geniuses in large families, and there was no lack of scum. There was a woman from the main branch of the Ying family who had taken a fancy to a woman and wanted to use money to get her. However, because the woman's family background was quite good, she didn't fall for it. The disciples of the direct lineage also tried to woo her a few times, but they were all rejected. In a fit of anger, they ordered people to kidnap her, intending to use force. However, she accidentally escaped, and then she was seen by their hot-blooded cousins. Zhao Fu's 2 cousins had also learned some martial arts, so they were quite strong. They were able to injure the disciple and the bodyguards who had come to capture them. For a collateral relative to a main branch to dare to attack a main branch member was a major crime in a large family with strict hierarchy. As such, they were captured and most likely had their hands and feet broken. However, if the main branch's disciple wasn't willing to let them off, he might kill them. Fu heir, I heard that she has a good relationship with Big Miss Ing Shi, and with her status, she'll definitely be able to resolve this matter. The two elders looked hopefully at Zhao Fu with pleading expressions. As for his cousins, Zhao Fu didn't have much feelings for them. He had only met them a few times during meals, but he didn't have much feelings for them. Zhao Fu was unfamiliar with family, friendship, and love, so he was rather cold towards them. If it was an ordinary person, Zhao Fu definitely wouldn't help them. What status did he have in Ing Shi's hands? He was nothing more than a puppet. He didn't have much power to speak, and he was just a minor figure. However, when he saw how worried and teary the two elders were, Zhao Fu sighed and said, "Grandpa, Grandma, you can go back first. Don't worry, I'll take care of this matter." "Really? Fu I'll leave it to you this time." Zhao Fu's words caused the two elders to rejoice. They truly didn't have any other choice, as offending such a major figure could result in their deaths. Zhao Fu gave a slightly bitter smile. After sending off the two elders, Zhao Fu sat on the sofa and thought about something. In actuality, his relationship with Ing Shi was just that of a chess piece. If it wasn't for Wu Qingyang, he would have been nothing more than a chess piece to her. He could have been sacrificed at any time, and without her protection, he would have been killed by the Li family long ago. This was a consensual relationship. Because of Wu Qingyang, she had completely given herself to Wu Qingyang and did not care too much about herself. As such, Zhao Fu had never seen her again, so it would be quite difficult to ask her to do things for him. Zhao Fu thought about it and sighed before taking out his phone and dialing a number. Following this, Zhao Fu took a car to a villa and followed a maid to a luxurious room. Wu Qingyang was wearing a long silk nightgown, and her long hair draped over her shoulders. She looked as if she had just woken up from bed, and her hair was a bit messy. However, her face no longer had the confidence and vitality from before, and there was even a trace of domineering air about her. Zhao Fu rarely saw Wu Qingyang like this, and he asked in concern, "Qingyang, what is it?" Wu Qingyang forced a smile and shook her head as she asked, "What did you come to find me for?" Zhao Fu felt quite embarrassed, and he told Wu Qingyang about his two cousins. Normally, if it was something that Zhao Fu could do, he wouldn't ask for help from others. However, this was something that Zhao Fu didn't have the ability to do, as he couldn't even guarantee his own safety in the real world. Wu Qingyang lightly laughed as she said, "Look at how awkward you look. It's because of this matter, and it's quite simple. I'll talk to Lil Shi about it." "Thank you very much," Zhao Fu said gratefully as he let out a sigh of relief. Wu Qingyang smiled as she looked at Zhao Fu with her beautiful eyes. "How will you repay me? I've never heard any news about you while I'm in the Forest of Horrors." "Zhao Fu." Wu Qingyang suddenly came over and stared at Zhao Fu as she said, "You're not lying to me, are you? Aren't you in the Forest of Horrors? What about the faction that you promised me to establish?" Zhao Fu looked quite awkward. He did remember this, but he hadn't done anything about it. "You haven't forgotten, right?" Wu Qingyang asked as she looked at Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu shook his head, indicating that he hadn't forgotten, but he didn't admit that he hadn't done anything about it. Wu Qingyang lightly harumphed and sat back down on the sofa, feeling quite angry as she said, "Now that the Myrtle Imperial Star has descended, the world will descend into chaos. I don't understand what you're thinking. If you don't establish your faction now, it'll be too late in the future. This is especially so because of that Prince Qin in the north." Hearing her words, Zhao Fu thought back to the downcast expression on her face and asked, "Was it because of Great Qin's legatee?" Wu Qingyang lightly nodded and sighed as she said, "Who else could it be? With him around, I can only see darkness in front of me without a trace of light. Qin is simply too powerful, and not only has he always been in the lead, but he's also awakened the Myrtle Imperial Star. We can't keep up with him anymore." Zhao Fu felt quite amused, so she was like that because of him. However, on the surface, he comforted her as he said, Awakening the Myrtle Imperial Star isn't that big of a deal. I'm sure that you'll be able to awaken it as well." Wu Qingyang rolled her eyes at Zhao Fu and said, "How dare you say that? Do you think that the Myrtle Imperial Star is a cabbage that can be easily awakened? It's the proof of an emperor." Zhao Fu looked at her with trust. "But I still think that you will awaken too." Facing Zhao Fu's gaze, Wu Qingyang's heart warmed, and a trace of joy appeared on her face. She no longer looked as depressed as before, and her confident and domineering aura returned as she stretched out her hand. The maid beside her handed over a phone, and Wu Qingyang said a few words. Chapter 251. Zhao Fu lightly nodded, indicating that he understood and promised that he would establish a faction as soon as possible. He then sat in Wu Qingyang's private car and arrived in front of a large house. At this moment, there were 4 people standing in front, 3 men and 1 woman. Behind them stood a few bodyguards wearing black suits and sunglasses. After getting out of the car, Zhao Fu first looked at the 2 men on the left. One was 22 years old, slightly older than Zhao Fu, and the other was 20 years old, with a childish look on his face. They were Zhao Fu's cousins, Zhao Hong and Zhao Jun. Their faces were bruised, as if they had been beaten a few times. However, it didn't seem like much, and they were all superficial wounds. Standing next to them were a man and a woman. The man looked noble, and the woman's appearance was also top-notch. As soon as Zhao Fu got out of the car, the noble young man smiled apologetically and said, "I'm sorry, I'm that bastard's older brother. I'm that bastard's older brother. My name is Ying, and it's my younger brother who's ignorant and incompetent. I've already taught him a good lesson, and this is my apology for offending you. Please forgive me." After Ying finished speaking, he called for someone to bring over a suitcase, which was filled with money. There was at least 2 million yuan inside, and even though the value of money was depreciating too quickly, it definitely wouldn't depreciate to the point where 100 yuan was equal to 1 yuan. However, Zhao Fu didn't think much of it and flatly refused. No need. Zhao Fu didn't believe his nonsense. If he didn't have someone supporting him, the other party wouldn't even look at him, so how could he apologize? This was how a world where the strong were respected was supposed to be. Zhao Fu's gaze fell on Zhao Hong and Zhao Jun, and he said coldly, "Let's go." Towards Zhao Fu's cold attitude, the few of them were somewhat dissatisfied. Ying thought that he was a direct descendant of the Ying family, yet he was being looked down upon by a branch family member. However, he couldn't show it because the other party had a connection with Ying Shi, and with Ying Shi's identity, they didn't dare to offend her. Zhao Hong and Zhao Jun felt quite dissatisfied, but they couldn't do anything because it was Zhao Fu who had saved them. At the same time, they felt a bit ashamed that they had needed Zhao Fu to save them. Zhao Fu ignored them, and after speaking, he opened the car door and sat in the front passenger seat. Zhao Hong and Zhao Jun looked at Zhao Fu and didn't say anything. After all, Zhao Fu wasn't close to them, and it was already good that Zhao Fu had come to save them. Just as the 2 of them were about, Zhao Fu turned and looked at the woman and smiled as he said, "Jing Jiao, do you want to come with us?" Jing Jiao was the woman who had been captured. She looked around and didn't dare to stay here, so she could only embarrassedly get on the car, and the 3 of them sat in the back. They were, and they didn't, and they as, and they had they went. They as they and they as they could they. And they and you and could as. On the way, Zhao Fu did not say anything and looked out the window. The 3 people in the back chatted for a while and felt quite happy that nothing had happened. "Cousin, thank you for coming to save us." Zhao Hong was slightly older than Zhao Fu, and his skin was thicker than his brother Zhao Jun's. Jing Jiao and Zhao Jun also said in a small voice, "Thank you." Zhao Fu turned and looked at them, and his tone wasn't as cold as before as he said, "No need, just remember this. Saving people is a good thing, but don't do things that you don't have the ability to do." These words caused Jing Jiao to lower her head in shame. Zhao Hong and Zhao Jun were quite dissatisfied, but they couldn't say anything, and the atmosphere in the car became cold. But I don't think I can stand it. If a woman doesn't help, she'll feel guilty for the rest of her life. Suddenly, Zhao Hong thought for a moment and said in a serious tone. Zhao Fu glanced at him before looking outside. Zhao Fu wanted to say, as long as you take responsibility for your actions, you don't need anyone to save you next time. However, Zhao Fu held himself back. After all, they were family, and Zhao Fu didn't want to ruin their relationship. In actuality, Zhao Fu wasn't against saving people. If you had the power to save people, Zhao Fu wouldn't have any objections. However, if you didn't have the power to save people, not only would you harm yourself, but you would also implicate others. The car continued on until they arrived at the district where Zhao Fu's grandparents lived. At that moment, four people were anxiously waiting downstairs. One of them was Zhao Fu's grandparents, uncle and auntie. When they saw that Zhao Hong and Zhao Jun had returned safely, they went over and hugged them worriedly, asking if they were injured or if there was anything wrong. Zhao Fu was like an outsider. Looking at this heartwarming scene, he didn't say anything and silently left by himself. By the time they came back to their senses and said that they wanted to thank Zhao Fu and cook a few dishes, they found that Zhao Fu had already left. After entering the Heaven Awakened world, Zhao Fu started to think about establishing a faction in the Forest of Horrors. This wasn't just to deal with Wu Qingyang. Zhao Fu also had his own considerations. Firstly, all of the factions in the Forest of Horrors would be cleared out. Otherwise, how would they be able to restore the great Qin Empire? Moreover, the Forest of Horrors was Qin's home, so there couldn't be any accidents. As such, he would start to clear out the factions in the Forest of Horrors one by one. There were some things that did not require Qin to show himself. He could use his faction to slowly develop, and the two factions would merge to clear out the other factions. Players were a large part of the resources, so Zhao Fu couldn't waste them. Being part of this organization should be based on the players. As for the location of the faction, Zhao Fu thought about it and called out, "Wang Ergu, give me all information on the Forest of Horrors factions." "Yes, Your Highness." Wang Ergu obeyed and immediately left the room. Soon, he returned to Zhao Fu's room with a pile of documents. Looking at this pile of documents, Zhao Fu felt like his head was about to explode. At that moment, Wang Ergu smiled and said, "Your Highness, this lowly one knows a bit about the Forest of Horrors factions. I have a rough understanding of the situation in the Forest of Horrors. Do you want me to explain it to you?" Zhao Fu smiled. There was so much information that he couldn't read in a short time, so he decided to listen to Wang Ergu. After hearing Zhao Fu's permission, Wang Ergu felt quite excited and organized his thoughts before saying, "Your Highness, right now, apart from the system factions, there are 3 factions that are far ahead of everyone else in the Forest of Horrors, and they're much stronger than most factions." These 3 factions were the Zhou family, Jiang family, and Soldier Alliance. Within Holy Light City, the Zhou family and Jiang family's competition was the most intense. The Holy Light group was suppressed by these 2 families, so its development was quite slow. Soldier Forest's Zhang family and Chao family were at a disadvantage against Soldier Alliance's development. Finally, Deviltree City's Yen family and Hua family's development was average. However, the number 1 player faction in Deviltree City, the Deviltree Gang, had split into 2 factions because of the conflict between the big brother and second brother. Now, they were fighting each other, and their faction was no longer the number 1 player faction. Chapter 252. The Assassin Souls members were mostly assassins, and their leader had obtained an assassin profession change stone steel that could allow a large number of assassins to become assassins. The Assassin Souls profession was E-grade, and it was quite a good profession. As such, the Assassin Souls faction had developed quite quickly. The Brotherhood group was mostly made up of soldiers, and they also took in some elite. They were the main force of the military in the Forest of Horrors, and they could represent the Forest of Horrors military. The Flying Sparrow sect was related to sex, and it was said that there was a sect in the real world. Everyone in that sect was quite strong, but it was quite difficult to enter. The Assassin Soul and the Flying Sparrow sect were in Demon Tree City. Demon Tree City did not have any powerful factions, so it was suitable for smaller factions to develop. The Brotherhood group was in Soldier Alliance, and it was said that Soldier Forest's City Lord gave preferential treatment to the righteous and kind-hearted factions. Zhao Fu had never thought that there would be so many changes in the Forest of Horrors. He had never thought that there would be so many changes in the Forest of Horrors. Some of the older factions had left, and some of the newer factions had joined. The competition was just that cruel. After hearing Wang Ergu's words, Zhao Fu also wanted to establish his faction in Demon Tree City. After all, there were no large factions controlling it, so it was quite suitable for a faction to develop. Zhao Fu had already thought of a way to expand. After his faction developed, he would devour the smaller factions and become the largest faction in Demon Tree City. After making this decision, Zhao Fu took Wang Ergu to Demon Tree City. Zhao Fu's impression of Demon Tree City was quite chaotic. Back then, the Demon Tree Gang had been there. This gang was made up of hoodlums, and they were incredibly arrogant and unreasonable. Zhao Fu did not know how the Demon Tree Gang had split up, but most of these factions had no future. After the Demon Tree Gang split up, Demon Tree City's environment became slightly better. Zhao Fu went to the property that he had bought in Demon Tree City and started to recruit people. There were people in charge of this, so Zhao Fu did not have to do it himself. He stayed in the house and watched everything outside. Zhao Fu's conditions were quite good. Ordinary members received 2,000 copper coins per month, which was 20,000 in the real world. Elite members received 5,000 copper coins, which was 50,000 in the real world. And core members received 20,000 copper coins, which was 200,000 in the real world. As for Zhao Fu's faction, it was called Heaven's Choice. It was natural selection. Zhao Fu wanted to create such a faction that would definitely become stronger. Otherwise, it would be eliminated by the world. After Zhao Fu's recruitment board was put up, because the conditions were quite good, it attracted quite a few people. However, Zhao Fu found that most of the people who came were quite ordinary, and there wasn't a single person who was even slightly powerful. Zhao Fu thought about it. The faction had just been established, so how could there be any experts joining? Right now, what Heaven's Choice needed the most was fame. As long as they had enough fame, they would be able to attract experts to join them. Zhao Fu thought of the fastest way to increase their fame, and that was to go and challenge them. Whether it was in terms of popularity or topic of discussion, it was very attractive. As long as they heard that someone was challenging the dojo, a large crowd would gather to watch. After the dojo challenge, it would become a topic of conversation. This would undoubtedly increase Heaven's Choice's reputation. Firstly, Zhao Fu had to do this himself, as he was the leader. Only then would he be able to gather and attract more people. However, Zhao Fu looked at his black cloak. He had appeared quite often in the Forest of Horrors. If he walked out like this, many people would be able to tell that he was Zhao Xian, especially those who were familiar with him. However, Zhao Xian's position in everyone's hearts was that of a kingdom's legatee, and his identity was unfathomable. Zhao Fu did not want others to think that he was Zhao Xian, or else his identity would be exposed. When he thought about that, Zhao Fu hesitated and decided to reveal his appearance. On one hand, he could deal with Wu Qingyang, but on the other hand, if he continued to hide his appearance, it would cause unnecessary suspicion. Before, Zhao Fu had hidden his appearance because he was afraid that his identity would be revealed. If he was found in the real world, he wouldn't be able to protect himself at all, and he would be easily killed. However, if he revealed his appearance now, he would be hiding his identity as Qin's legatee. From now on, he was Zhao Fu, a student from the Ing family's collateral family. Even if he was found in the real world, they would only know that he was one of the Ing family's chess pieces, and no one would suspect him. After thinking about it, Zhao Fu made his decision and took off his black cloak. He revealed his waist-length black hair, white clothes, and a delicate and pretty face. He gave off a trace of elegance, nobility, and majesty, and gave off the aura of a leader. Zhao Fu's current appearance was much more attractive than in the real world. "Your Majesty, how did you?" When Wang Ergu saw that Zhao Fu had revealed his appearance, he was incredibly shocked. He thought that the cloak had fallen off, and he instinctively wanted to help Zhao Fu put it back on. However, Zhao Fu smiled and cut him off, saying, "It's fine. I took it off myself." Hearing this, Wang Ergu let out a sigh of relief and asked curiously, "Your Majesty, why did you reveal your appearance?" Zhao Fu didn't explain too much, and he only said, "You'll understand after this." Wang Ergu felt quite confused, but he didn't dare to ask. Following this, Zhao Fu put the two swords at his waist back into his king's ring. These two swords were epic-grade weapons, and taking them out would be too eye-catching. Zhao Fu equipped a normal gold-grade sword and tied it to his waist before walking out. Dang! Zhao Fu stepped out of the door, and when his foot touched the ground, boom! An incomparably terrifying aura suddenly descended, weighing down on the countless people outside. The air seemed to freeze, and their bodies stiffened. They felt as if there was a massive boulder weighing down on them, and their legs trembled as cold sweat appeared on their faces. Suddenly, a voice sounded out in everyone's ears. Even though it wasn't very loud, everyone could hear it clearly because this voice seemed to be irresistible. "I am Heaven's Choice's master, and the reason I established this faction is to continuously become stronger. It's a survival of the fittest, and joining Heaven's Choice is very simple. As long as you can withstand my aura for 5 seconds, you will be able to join Heaven's Choice and receive the treatment of a core member." Zhao Fu's words caused everyone to feel delighted. Core members don't even have to do anything, and they will receive $200,000 in the real world. How could they not be happy? They felt that they would definitely be able to withstand Zhao Fu's aura. After all, as long as they gritted their teeth and endured for 5 seconds, they would be able to do so. Some of the ordinary people gritted their teeth and mustered up all of their strength. Their faces were completely red, and they used all of their strength to resist this terrifying aura. Some of the people with higher cultivations were better off than the ordinary people. Under this powerful aura, they were still able to raise their heads and look around. "I see that no one has fallen. There are 3,000 or so people here. Could it be that they are all going to join Heaven's Choice and enjoy the treatment of core members? That's too simple." These people thought to themselves as they smirked. Before, this person said that as long as they could withstand for 5 seconds, they would all be accepted into Heaven's Choice. Now that there are so many people, isn't this a bit too much of a slap to his face? Chapter 253. Boom. An aura that was more than twice as terrifying as before descended, as if it was solid. The dust in the surroundings was blown into the air, and this aura heavily pressed down on them. Those who had been bitterly enduring felt their legs go soft, and a large number of them fell to the ground. Some of the more powerful people were startled and realized that they had underestimated Zhao Fu's power. They immediately circulated their full power to resist Zhao Fu's aura. Time seemed to slow down. Even 5 seconds seemed to have become so long. The remaining people bitterly endured under Zhao Fu's powerful aura. Bean-sized beads of sweat appeared on their bodies. Facing the current aura, it was somewhat taxing for them. However, an even more powerful aura descended, heavily pressing down on their bodies. They were unable to bear this power, and they all fell to the ground. In the end, there were only 5 people left standing. These 5 people's cultivations were all above stage 1, and they were definitely powerful people among ordinary people. Of the 5, there were 4 men and 1 woman, and they were all relatively young. Under Zhao Fu's powerful aura, they were able to endure with great difficulty. However, in the next moment, an even more powerful aura pressed down on their bodies like a massive invisible boulder. In the end, the 5 of them collapsed to the ground, their bodies covered in sweat. "It's useless. You can't even take a third of my power." A cold snort rang out in everyone's ears. This caused everyone to feel quite embarrassed and bitter. They no longer had the pride and confidence they had before. Who would have thought that the leader of the Heaven's Choice faction would be so powerful? We can't even withstand a third of his power. How embarrassing! Zhao Fu retracted his aura, and the others climbed up from the ground dejectedly. They planned to leave, not wanting to continue embarrassing themselves here. However, at that moment Zhao Fu calmly said, "I'm willing to accept the people from the 2nd and 3rd batches. Are you willing to join Heaven's Choice?" These words caused all of the dispirited people to feel delighted. To have such a powerful leader and such good treatment, it was evident that Heaven's Choice was a faction with great prospects, so they were willing to join. This time, Heaven's Choice had recruited 145 people. The 5 people who had died in the 3rd batch were given the treatment of core members by Zhao Fu. Let them register their identities. Wang Ergu came to Zhao Fu's side and smiled as he reported, "Young master, it's all taken care of." Zhao Fu had asked Wang Ergu to make some arrangements. After all, challenging a dojo was a private fight. It had a huge impact. How could they not inform the officials? This time, they had received tacit approval to challenge Demonic Tree City, but there were prerequisites. They couldn't harm the natives of Demonic Tree City or cause any major damage. It would be best if they chose some evil faction that the government couldn't deal with directly. Therefore, this time, Zhao Fu would not be punished by Demon Tree City. Instead, he might be rewarded. "Assemble!" Zhao Fu stood in front and shouted. The 100 or so people who had just joined Heaven's Choice immediately surrounded Zhao Fu. They didn't know what was going on. Today. This is the first day Heaven's Choice was created, and it is also a historic day. We must leave something behind. I see that Demon Tree City has been in chaos for a long time, and now is the time to restore some peace. Are you all willing to go with me? The people below could tell that Zhao Fu wanted to cause trouble, and some of them became excited, wanting to go with Zhao Fu. However, some people hesitated and didn't want to go. After all, if they caused trouble in a main city, they would be punished by the government. They just wanted to be treated well by Heaven's Choice and didn't want to fight and kill. Zhao Fu stood at the front and could tell what was going on, so he said in a loud voice, "This time, I'm going to continuously challenge other factions. There might be bloody battles and you might all die. In the future, I'll have countless enemies, big and small, so if you want to leave, do it now. After all, Heaven's Choice isn't a faction that's content." These words caused 40 or so people to leave, leaving behind 108 people. None of the 5 core members left, making Zhao Fu feel quite surprised. "Are you sure? The path ahead is very bloody and cruel, but this is Heaven's Choice's path." Zhao Fu once again yelled. Zhao Fu didn't want these people to continue staying in Heaven's Choice. There was no point in having such people. "I'm sure." Some people yelled, while others earnestly nodded. Seeing this, Zhao Fu took out 100 or so pieces of blue-grade equipment from his king's ring, and 5 pieces of silver-grade equipment were given out, delighting everyone. They had never thought that Zhao Fu would be able to take out so much good equipment, and Zhao Fu's identity became more and more mysterious. However, from Zhao Fu's aura, they could tell that Zhao Fu definitely wasn't an ordinary person. With so much good equipment, the people who had left before felt quite regretful. Zhao Fu led his group of people and aggressively walked onto the street. Seeing this, the surrounding people all made way for them, feeling that something big was about to happen. Many people followed behind Zhao Fu to see what was going on. "Ergu, Heaven's Choice is here. Are there any other factions nearby? Zhao Fu asked Wang Ergu as he walked in front. Wang Ergu thought for a moment before replying, "Young master, there's a small faction not too far away. There's a small faction not too far away. I'll take you there." Zhao Fu nodded and followed Wang Ergu to a large courtyard. There were a few ruffian-looking young men standing guard at the entrance, chatting about vulgar things such as whose wife had a good figure and who wanted to do her, or which woman had a good body and was coquettish. "Young master, this is the Azure Snake Gang, and they have around 500 people. Most of them are ruffians, and their strength is not to be underestimated." Wang Ergu brought Zhao Fu here and gave him some information about the factions here. Seeing Zhao Fu bring so many people to the Azure Snake Gang, the young men standing guard felt quite nervous, but they weren't afraid. After all, there were only 100 or so people in front of them, while the Azure Snake Gang had 500 people, which was many times their number. As such, they weren't afraid at all. "Who are you? Why have you come to the Azure Snake Gang?" A member of the Azure Snake Gang walked over. Because he was used to speaking like this, he had an arrogant air about him. Zhao Fu didn't like this sort of attitude, and he coldly looked at this member of the Azure Snake Gang. He waved his hand and a sword light flashed. Pooh! A long gash appeared on the Azure Snake Gang member's chest, and blood flowed out. The young man looked quite confused, as he hadn't expected Zhao Fu to directly kill him. He immediately fell to the ground and died. As a member of the Heaven's Choice faction, Zhao Fu gulped and looked quite shocked. Even though that person's tone was quite disgusting, he hadn't expected Zhao Fu to kill him so decisively. Chapter 254. These people were so scared that they picked up the duel invitation and ran back into the courtyard. Following this, a sinister-looking middle-aged man brought a large group of people and rushed out, looking at Zhao Fu with an unkind gaze as he said, "Brat, you dare to come to my Azure Snake Gang and challenge me?" Zhao Fu glanced at the middle-aged man and ignored his words, and he said calmly, "Are you going to submit? Or are you going to die?" The middle-aged man's expression became savage. He had been looked down upon like this. He drew his sword and stabbed towards Zhao Fu's throat without saying anything. The middle-aged man's speed was as fast as lightning, and it was completely unexpected. Before most of the people could react, the middle-aged man's sword was about to stab into Zhao Fu's throat. The people watching thought to themselves that he was so despicable, attacking so suddenly. However, Zhao Fu just stood there, not moving at all as he looked at the incoming middle-aged man. Facing Zhao Fu's gaze, the sinister-looking man felt a chill in his heart. He felt that Zhao Fu's gaze did not treat him as a living person at all. The sinister-looking man hardened his heart and once again stabbed towards Zhao Fu's throat. However, the sinister-looking man suddenly saw Zhao Fu move. Zhao Fu slowly stretched out his hand and easily caught the sword with 2 fingers. The sinister-looking man was given a big fright and quickly pulled his sword back. Shing! Zhao Fu bent his fingers, breaking the sinister-looking man's sword in half. He then caught the tip of the sword and slashed forwards, sending out a cold light. Pooh! The sinister-looking man's throat was slashed open, causing blood to spurt out. The sinister-looking man clutched his throat in disbelief. How could Zhao Fu be so powerful? Even though he was quite unwilling, he still slowly fell to the ground and died. All of this had happened in an incredibly short amount of time, in just a few seconds. They watched as Zhao Fu killed the sinister-looking man in a single move. Heaven's Choice's people were all quite shocked. This sinister-looking man's cultivation was a bit higher than Zhao Fu's 5 core members, but he couldn't resist at all in front of Zhao Fu. This caused those 5 core members to feel quite startled. If Zhao Fu killed them, he would be able to do so effortlessly. The surrounding people also widened their eyes at the scene in front of them. To be the boss of a faction, one must have some strength. They didn't expect the leader of the Green Snake Gang to be killed so easily. Avenge boss! At this moment, the Azure Snake Gang reacted. They raised their weapons and roared as they charged over. A cold light shot out of Zhao Fu's eyes as he sent his king's power into the tip of the sword, causing it to shine with a black light. Zhao Fu heavily slashed out, and the air seemed to be sliced apart as a 5-meter-long arc of light appeared. Pooh! Puff! Puff! This sharp arc of light instantly split 10 or so people's bodies in half, causing blood and organs to flow out, making the scene incredibly bloody. Zhao Fu released a massive aura, suppressing the entire scene. His sharp gaze fell on the Azure Snake Gang's people as he coldly yelled, "This place will be taken over by Heaven's choice. Scram!" Under this massive aura and seeing how powerful Zhao Fu was, how could the Azure Snake Gang dare to resist? They didn't want to die, and they immediately scattered like frightened birds. Heaven's Choice's people felt incredibly excited as they looked at how powerful and domineering their leader was. News of the Azure Snake Gang's destruction quickly spread, and most factions heard about this. However, they didn't pay much attention to it, as a small faction like the Azure Snake Gang wasn't even worth mentioning. After leaving 50 or so people to take care of this place, Zhao Fu continued to lead his people. If he wanted to become the #1 faction in Demon Tree City, he needed to have an extremely high reputation. As such, Zhao Fu didn't keep a low profile, and he instead kept a high profile. Even though this didn't fit with Zhao Fu's personality, if he didn't do this, he wouldn't be able to increase Heaven's Choice's reputation. Zhao Fu had high hopes for the faction that he had personally created. Even in the future Heaven Awakened world, he wanted it to become a top-tier faction. Ergu, are there any other factions around here? Zhao Fu asked Wang Ergu as he led his people ahead. Heaven's Choice's people behind him looked incredibly excited. Wang Ergu happily smiled and obediently brought Zhao Fu to a courtyard. Young master, this is the 100 Thief Society's territory, and most of the people here are petty thieves. They usually don't show themselves, and there are 400 or so of them. They're a bit weaker than the Azure Snake Gang. After hearing Wang Ergu's explanation, Zhao Fu strode forwards. There were also people standing guard outside, but because of their professions they were quite cautious. Seeing that Zhao Fu had brought so many people, they nervously asked, "Why have you come to the 100 Thief Society?" "Just leave this to your leader." Zhao Fu didn't kill anyone this time, and he only handed the duel invitation to the guards. The Azure Snake Gang's people had died because of their tone. The guards took the invitation and warily looked at Zhao Fu before running back into the courtyard. Following this, a vulgar-looking young man walked out with his people. "You want to fight? You want the 100 Thief Society to submit to you?" The vulgar-looking young man coldly harumphed as he looked at Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu calmly nodded. "You're looking down on the 100 Thief Society too much. Brothers, let's go. They're outnumbered. Let's show them our power," the vulgar-looking young man roared. The other members of the 100 Thief Society immediately took out their daggers or knives and rushed at Zhao Fu's people. Zhao Fu was looking down on them too much. However, what they didn't know was that compared to the Azure Snake Gang, Zhao Fu was already giving them a lot of face. The vulgar-looking young man and 2 of the society's experts took out their daggers and rushed at Zhao Fu, wanting to team up and kill Zhao Fu. Seeing this, Zhao Fu stood there and gave a trace of a smile, but it contained a trace of coldness. The first person rushed at Zhao Fu from the side, and the knife in his hand gave off a cold light as he slashed towards the back of Zhao Fu's neck. Zhao Fu circulated his king's power and punched out, hitting that person's chest. The sound of bones breaking could be heard as that person coughed up a mouthful of blood and flew backward. The other person rushed towards Zhao Fu's other side, and the dagger in his hand slashed towards Zhao Fu's throat. Zhao Fu clenched his other fist and punched out, sending that person flying. At that moment, the vulgar-looking young man's figure suddenly appeared in front of Zhao Fu. He had been using his two subordinates to attack first before looking for a good opportunity because he had a sure kill technique. The vulgar-looking young man's figure appeared in front of Zhao Fu and seemed to split into multiple clones that attacked Zhao Fu from different directions. The vulgar-looking young man was quite confident in this technique, and seeing that his dagger was about to stab into Zhao Fu's chest, he rejoiced. However, his throat was suddenly grabbed by a hand, and the vulgar-looking young man looked quite confused as he looked up at Zhao Fu. Crack! Chapter 255. On the other side, the 100 Thief Society and Zhao Fu's Heaven's Choice were fighting. At that moment, a powerful aura weighed down on their bodies, causing their bodies to freeze. They slowly turned their heads and saw that the incredibly terrifying person had casually tossed their boss's corpse aside like it was trash. The entire scene was incredibly silent, and the sound of the corpse landing on the ground could be heard clearly. Seeing that cold gaze land on them, their hearts felt a chill. "I'll give you 3 seconds to leave." Hearing Zhao Fu's cold words, the 100 Thief Society's people were so scared that they immediately ran for their lives. However, there were 2 people who seemed to be on good terms with the 100 Thief Society's leader, and they loudly yelled as they rushed over to take revenge. Zhao Fu stood where he was and coldly watched as they rushed over. He waved his finger, sending out a sword light that cut off their heads. Heaven's Choice's people looked at Zhao Fu with gazes of worship, feeling incredibly excited to have such a powerful leader. News of the 100 Thief Society's destruction quickly spread, and adding on the matter with the Azure Snake Gang, everyone couldn't help but pay attention to Heaven's Choice. Zhao Fu felt that there was no point in bringing more people, so he left the remaining 50 or so people here. As for the 5 core members, Zhao Fu took them with him to see if there was any value in nurturing them. Right now, it was only because of their cultivation that he had made them core members. However, Zhao Fu didn't truly treat them as core members, because apart from strength, core members also needed loyalty. Zhao Fu didn't even remember the names of these 5 people. Zhao Fu continued onwards with them. "Ergu, are there any other factions nearby?" Hearing Zhao Fu's words, Wang Ergu hurriedly nodded and brought Zhao Fu to a wooden building. "Young master, this is a very ordinary faction without anything special about it. It's called Starcliff and has roughly 200 people." Zhao Fu brought his people to the door. There were only 200 people, and Zhao Fu could not be bothered to issue a duel. He directly exploded out with a powerful aura, scaring everyone out of the wooden building. Zhao Fu glanced at the people who had run out and found a familiar face. It was a dark-skinned, honest-looking young man called Niu Gu. Back when Zhao Fu was not in the real world, he had been studying and working at the same time. He was one of Zhao Fu's former colleagues. "Zhao Fu?" Niu Gu looked at Zhao Fu in shock. It had only been a few months, but Zhao Fu seemed to have become a completely different person. He could not believe it and asked in a tone of certainty. Zhao Fu nodded helplessly. Revealing his appearance was a bit troublesome. Those who knew him before would recognize him. Niu Gu foolishly laughed and looked at the terrified people around him. He stretched out his hand and said in a loud voice, "We're all on the same side, so don't be afraid. He's Zhao Fu, my friend." Zhao Fu withdrew his aura, and Niu Gu walked up and passionately put his hand on Zhao Fu's shoulder. "Zhao Fu, it's been a long time since I've seen you. You've been doing quite well. When I saw you go back to work, I thought you had disappeared." When Wang Ergu saw Niu Gu put his hand on Zhao Fu's shoulder, he was given a big fright. He had never seen anyone who dared to do such a thing before, and anyone who dared to do such a thing would have long since died. However, since Your Majesty didn't say anything, he couldn't say anything. Hearing Niu Gu's words, Zhao Fu nodded and replied, "Some things happened." He then turned to look at the people from Starcliff and asked, "This faction?" Niu Gu embarrassedly replied, "It was established by me and a few friends. We don't have any power or funds, so we haven't been doing very well. Zhao Fu looked at the people from Starcliffe and gave some conditions for them to join Heaven's Choice. Of course, they could only be ordinary members. Niugu and the others were quite delighted and agreed, because Zhao Fu's conditions were quite good. Niugu was quite shocked by Zhao Fu's current strength, and he kept pestering Zhao Fu about how he wanted to become rich with him. Zhao Fu felt quite speechless and decided to take him with him. They continued to clear out the regions around Heaven's Choice, destroying 8 factions in total. These were only some of the smaller factions, and the more powerful factions all had their own villages, unlike these people who still had to rely on system main cities. The fact that Heaven's Choice had destroyed 8 factions shocked all of the factions in Demon Tree City, and they all felt quite wary. After all, Heaven's Choice's sudden rise could not be underestimated. Right now, the hottest topic in Demon Tree City was Heaven's Choice. Many people were watching the show, and they exaggerated how domineering Zhao Fu had been in destroying factions by himself. This caused countless people to sigh in amazement, and Heaven's Choice's name resounded throughout Demon Tree City. As Heaven's Choice became more and more famous, many talented people joined Heaven's Choice. Just like that, Zhao Fu took in 5,000 people, and in just a single day, he had turned Heaven's Choice into a mid-tier faction. The speed at which it developed shocked countless people. Even the large factions in Holy Light City and Soldier Forest heard about Heaven's Choice's sudden rise. At the same time, they felt quite curious about Zhao Fu's sudden appearance and started to investigate him. How could such a powerful person suddenly appear, and he even has a large amount of funds? Information about Zhao Fu was quickly found out by many factions, and they couldn't help but admire these factions' abilities. When they found out that Zhao Fu had the Ying family's backing, all of the factions became quite serious. In fact, some factions even felt quite afraid. They're not afraid of the Ying family extending their hands here, but they're afraid of the Ying family's legatee Qin. I heard that legatee Qin is in East Green, which is next to the Forest of Horrors. Could it be that Zhao Fu has paved the way for legatee Qin? Now that they thought about facing legatee Qin, even ordinary nation factions would feel afraid, let alone ordinary families like theirs. What should we do? What should we do? Legatee Qin's threat made them feel incredibly anxious, but in the end, there was nothing they could do. In front of legatee Qin, everything seemed to be useless. Unless they had nation armaments, only then would they be able to contend against him. However, none of them had nation armaments. In the end, they could only take things one day at a time. At the same time, they understood why Zhao Fu was so powerful and had so much money. With the support of such a powerful Ying family, there was nothing strange about this. Many factions expressed a friendly attitude towards Heaven's Choice. From how they saw it, after legatee Qin devoured East Green and made a move against the Forest of Horrors, if they couldn't resist legatee Qin, they could only choose to submit to legatee Qin. When that happened, Zhao Fu became incredibly important. After all, Zhao Fu was part of the Ying family and had paved the way for legatee Qin. Legatee Qin would most likely take a liking to Zhao Fu, and if they relied on Zhao Fu to put in a few good words for legatee Qin, they would be able to obtain massive benefit. It was said that Qin was incredibly bloodthirsty, and if he was unhappy, he might slaughter them all. As such, they could only rely on Zhao Fu to survive. Chapter 256. Wu Qingyang had also received news about Zhao Fu, and seeing how Heaven's Choice had risen in just a single day, she happily smiled. She hadn't misjudged him. Wu Qingyang didn't care too much about Zhao Fu's strength and wealth, as she knew that Zhao Fu had some secrets. However, she wouldn't ask about them, as doing so would make her feel disgusted. Now that Zhao Fu had such strength, he would be of great help to her in the future. The only thing she was worried about was legatee Qin. If legatee Qin appeared in East Green, everyone in the regions around him would be in danger. Right now, she could only hope that the no-fly zones would disappear and that the various regions would be able to teleport to the system main cities. Only then would Zhao Fu be able to bring all of his factions to her, only then would he truly be able to help her restore later Zhou. Wu Qingyang's desire to deal with Zhao Fu became stronger and stronger, and she wanted to grasp him in her hands. Your Majesty, there's something I need you to take care of. At this moment, a somewhat thin young man with a pair of eyes filled with intelligence walked in, bowed, and reported to the old man. He was Di Renjie. Within Great Tangsley residence, the old man's expression darkened as he listened to the butler talk about Zhao Fu. He coldly harumphed as he said, I never thought that the Ying family would support him so much. I've underestimated that bastard's abilities. He's quite happy being a dog in the Ying family. The old man could already sense a trace of threat from Zhao Fu, and a cold light appeared in his eyes as he gave off a dense killing intent. Seeing this, the butler bowed and asked, Sir, should we continue to send people to kill him? The old man really wanted to kill Zhao Fu, but after thinking about it, he said, Don't do anything for now. Right now, Legatee Qin's power is too great, and we can't do anything to offend the Ying family. Collect information on him, but if there's a good opportunity, kill him. The butler nodded and left the room. In another room, Li Ziqing sat on a chair and looked at the report on Zhao Fu that his subordinates had handed him. He lightly laughed, but there was a trace of coldness in his voice as he said, Since you want to die, don't blame me. Within the Ying residence, Yingxi also found out about Zhao Fu, and a look of shock appeared on her face. Who would have thought that Zhao Fu had hidden himself so deeply? She had truly underestimated him. Back then, when Wu Qingyang had said that she couldn't control him, she hadn't believed her, but now she did. It was a pity that she had given him to Wu Qingyang, or else he would have been a great help to her. Back at Zhao Fu's side, Zhao Fu had established Heaven's Choice and expanded its members to 5,000 or so. After that, he had entered a period of consolidation. In other words, he had developed too quickly and his foundation was not stable. What he needed to do now was to consolidate Heaven's Choice's foundation before he could continue to develop. Zhao Fu looked at the 7 people before him. First, there were the 5 core members that Zhao Fu had recruited. After a few battles, Zhao Fu found that they were not bad, and he planned to nurture them. Of the 4 men, the bright-looking one was Bai Yang, the gloomy-looking one was Qin Kongming, the savage-looking one was Guoshan, and the clean-looking one was Qing Chunqi. The last woman was called Wei Xia. She looked quite ordinary and had the boorish and heroic air of a northeastern-looking woman. The remaining 2 were Niu Gu and a fox-looking woman called Xiao Ye. She was the leader of a small faction, and she had come to find Zhao Fu without any conditions to join Heaven's Choice. Zhao Fu thought about it and agreed to let them join. Of course, Zhao Fu didn't completely trust everyone here, nor did he trust the current members of Heaven's Choice. As such, he needed some time to understand them and form a true faction. Let me tell you something. The real world is no longer safe, and the Heaven Awakened world will definitely devour the real world. Even though I don't know when it will happen, you should all be prepared, Zhao Fu said seriously as he looked at them. This wasn't a big deal, as most large families and factions already knew about it. However, these low-level people were still quite shocked. Bai Yang said in disbelief, Leader, I know that there's a lot of news on the internet about the end of the world, but experts say that it's all fake. Don't believe it. The government has confirmed it, and it's impossible. The others nodded and looked at Zhao Fu in unison. Hearing his words, Zhao Fu could not help but laugh. You still don't know the truth of this world? That's just to stabilize the real world and avoid chaos. Countless families already know about it, but only you people are still hidden. After hearing what Zhao Fu had to say, everyone could sense the changes in the real world. Money continuously depreciated, and the various large corporations quickly threw out all sorts of resources to exchange for things in the Heaven Awakened world. They were not stupid, and they had long since become wary of these changes. Now that they heard what Zhao Fu had to say, they understood. Damn it! I can't believe you're messing with us about something so important! Nyogu yelled angrily. Everyone else felt the same way, as this was a matter of life and death. If the heaven-awakened world devoured the real world, they would be so unprepared that they wouldn't even know how they died. How could they not be angry? I'm now a member of the Ing family, and with the Ing family's support, Heaven's Choice's development will be incredibly fast. You most likely don't have the power to protect yourselves in the real world, so you can come to the Ing family's territory. Your safety will be guaranteed by the Ing family. At that moment, Zhao Fu tossed out another big piece of news. What? Leader, you're from the Ing family? Everyone else looked incredibly shocked. They didn't even dare to think about joining a faction like the Ing family. At the same time, they understood why Zhao Fu was so powerful and had so much money. No wonder he had been so mysterious. He was from the Ing family. Leader, have you seen Legatee Qin before? Wei Xia suddenly asked excitedly, and everyone else looked at Zhao Fu curiously. Legatee Qin was a famous name in the world, and there was no one who didn't know him. There was no one who wouldn't be curious about him. Hearing this, Zhao Fu inwardly laughed. He knew that they were asking if he had seen that impostor. Zhao Fu thought about it and nodded. Everyone immediately asked about this and that, and Zhao Fu gave a simple explanation. Everyone looked quite satisfied, and Wei Xia sighed and said, "When will I be able to see him with my own eyes? He's the man of my dreams." This caused everyone to look at Wei Xia in shock, but Wei Xia didn't mind and said, "What are you looking at? What woman wouldn't like such a domineering and powerful man?" After hearing this, Zhao Fu bitterly smiled and shook his head. He then asked them if they were willing to move to the Ing family's territory. All of them replied in unison that they were willing to receive the protection of the Ing family. This was something that they had always wanted, but were unable to obtain, so how could they refuse? As for why Zhao Fu didn't have the power to protect them, he could only rely on Wu Qingyang. There were two main reasons why Zhao Fu wanted them to move to the Ing family. Chapter 257. Firstly, Zhao Fu wanted to protect them. No matter how powerful they were in the heaven-awakened world, in the real world, they were just ordinary people. They could be easily crushed by anyone, and this was especially so for the large families. Ordinary people could not compare to the large families, and if they harmed their interests, they could be killed at will. This was indeed quite unfair, but it could not be changed. After all, the weak were prey to the strong, and there was no such thing as fairness. Right now, the large families ruled the world. Perhaps after the heaven-awakened world devoured the real world, only ordinary people would be able to resist the large families without the restrictions of the real world. On the other hand, Zhao Fu wanted to control them. If they dared to betray him, he would be able to kill them. After a few lessons, it was very difficult for Zhao Fu to trust others. After dealing with Heaven's Choice, Zhao Fu once again returned to Qin City. Today was the day that he had agreed to trade people with the Orc City. This was already the fourth time, and the previous 3 times, Zhao Fu had used equipment and medicinal pills to trade for 3,000 or so people. Each time, Gunador would give Zhao Fu some giant wolves, which Zhao Fu gave to his orcs. They found that some of the giant wolves could be controlled, while others could be dangerous. Zhao Fu killed all of the giant wolves that were dangerous. After all, Zhao Fu had the Black Forest horses, so he did not lack mounts. He had also used the horse Jade Soul that he had obtained from the region of bones, and now, all of his horses' stats were around stage 0 to 6. However, the giant wolves had their benefits. They could be used as mounts or as battle beasts, using their sharp teeth to tear enemies apart. This time, Zhao Fu once again used the teleportation channel to go to the Orc City. The orcs guarding the city gates were quite familiar with Zhao Fu, and they were quite happy that Zhao Fu had brought them so many benefits. Zhao Fu had won their respect, and they no longer looked down on him. "Guest, you've come again. I'll take you to the Vice-Lord now. One of the orc guards laughed as he said loudly. You're here again. Zhao Fu smiled as he took out a bottle of little spirit pills and handed it over. The Beastman guard accepted it and put it in his pocket before bringing Zhao Fu to a large tent. However, what surprised Zhao Fu was that Gunador was already talking to someone else. This person was also wearing a cloak, so he couldn't see his appearance. However, from his voice, Zhao Fu could tell that he was familiar with this person. Zhao Fu thought about it and realized that this person was Zhou Ming from the Zhou family. Why is he here? Looks like I'm not the only one who wants to work with the Beastmen. The Zhou family has the support of the great Ming dynasty, so they have the capital to come here. At this moment, Gunador noticed Zhao Fu standing at the entrance of the tent, and he smiled as he said, Guest, is it because my khaki city isn't a good host? Why are you standing at the entrance? Zhao Fu found an excuse and said apologetically, I saw that the Vice-Lord was discussing something with someone, so I didn't want to disturb the two of you, so I waited at the entrance. Hearing this voice, Zhou Ming turned and immediately recognized Zhao Fu. Zhou Ming felt quite shocked. I never thought that I would meet Zhao Fu here. From the tone of the orcs' conversation, it seems that they've known each other for a long time, and they seem to be working together. However, Zhao Xian's sudden appearance has completely disrupted his plans. After obtaining the great Ming dynasty's support, the Zhou family's faction had rapidly developed. However, with the Jiang family as their enemy, the two families had completely fallen out, and they were now intensely competing with each other. Zhou Ming thought about how Jiang Feng had sacrificed his little sister to obtain many benefits from Zhao Fu. Adding on what had happened between Zhao Fu and the Zhou family, Zhou Ming hated Zhao Fu and wanted him to die a horrible death. Now that they had a large amount of resources to support them, it would be very difficult for the Zhou family to obtain any more benefits in Holy Light City. Zhou Ming suddenly thought of the faction that everyone had overlooked, the Orc City. The Orc City wasn't a system main city, and it lacked many things. If they could work together, they would be able to obtain massive benefits, and the Zhou family's power would instantly surpass the Jiang family's. But now, this plan was completely disrupted by Zhao Fu. Zhou Ming's eyes were like a venomous snake's as he stared at Zhao Fu and coldly called out, Zhao Exin. Sensing Zhou Ming's hostility, Zhao Fu narrowed his eyes and couldn't help but snort coldly in his heart. If it wasn't for the fact that it wasn't time yet, Zhao Fu wanted to exterminate the Zhou clan right now. However, on the surface, Zhao Fu said politely, Young Master Zhou, long time no see. Gunador realized that the two people in front of him knew each other, so he smiled and welcomed Zhao Fu in. When Zhou Ming heard Zhao Fu's words, he turned his head away and ignored him. Zhao Fu ignored Zhou Ming and directly said to Gunador, Vice-Lord, I'm here to trade for people. I'm here to trade for people. When he heard this, Gunador smiled and said, I'll take you there. We've captured quite a few slaves this time. When Zhou Ming heard this, he was quite shocked. He hadn't expected Zhao Fu to use money to buy people. Did he only have that much money? At that moment, Gunador turned and apologized before asking Zhou Ming to wait for a moment. Of course, Zhou Ming wanted to take a look as well. After all, he lacked people, and perhaps he could buy some from here. He also wanted to test out Zhao Fu's true strength, so he smiled and said, Vice-Lord, I also want to take a look. Gunador didn't mind and was about to agree. However, at that moment, Zhao Fu's voice sounded out, Vice-Lord, this is a secret trade. I don't want others to know how many slaves I've bought and how much money I've spent. Alright, let's do this in secret. Since Zhou Ming didn't give him any face, Zhao Fu didn't give him any face either. Gunador looked quite troubled, but when he thought about how Zhao Fu was the person who could benefit the most from this trade, he could only apologize to Zhou Ming. This made Zhou Ming's expression incredibly unsightly. Following this, Gunador brought Zhao Fu to the field. There were roughly 1,700 or so people in the wooden cages, and even though their grades weren't very good, Zhao Fu was quite satisfied with them. At that moment, Zhao Fu took out twice as much equipment and medicinal pills, making Gunador feel quite confused. Zhao Fu said seriously, "Vice Lord, that person has enmity with me, and I don't want him to develop. As such, I don't want the Orc City to cooperate with him. In order to make up for the Orc City's losses, I'm willing to buy slaves at twice the price." Gunador immediately agreed, and Zhao Fu smiled as he started to transport the slaves back to Qin City. A few hours later, Gunador and Zhou Ming smiled as they reached an agreement. That's right. Gunador had immediately turned around and betrayed Zhao Fu, and he had even told Zhou Ming about Zhao Fu's words, telling him to keep his dealings with the Orc City a secret. Zhou Ming felt incredibly delighted as he inwardly thought to himself, "That damn Zhao Xian wants to restrict the Zhou family's development. Who would have thought that the Orc City would be willing to cooperate with me? We need to keep this matter a secret and not let Zhao Xian know." To the Orcs, profit was everything. Gunador had never treated Zhao Fu or Zhou Ming as friends because the Orc army would definitely trample over their corpses. Chapter 258. Ever since Gunador had given the giant wolf to Zhao Fu had lost all trust in the Orcs. However, Zhao Fu had never trusted the Orcs, so he had been wary of the giant wolf. Of course, Zhao Fu had also checked all of the slaves that he had bought. Zhao Fu didn't put these people into the army, and they were only responsible for supporting the Orcs. He also had people secretly observe them in case they leaked any information about Qin. Zhao Fu knew that Gunador would work with Zhou Ming because apart from equipment, there were other things that the Orcs needed, such as food, materials, skills, spices, and potions. The Orc City wasn't a system main city, so it wasn't as complete as a system main city. As such, they needed to buy all sorts of things from the system main city. Zhao Fu had thought about this before, and he knew that there would be a lot of profit. However, Zhao Fu didn't do this because Zhao Fu didn't lack money, and Zhao Fu didn't want the Orcs to develop too quickly. As such, he didn't want to work with the Orcs. Since Zhao Fu didn't trust the Orcs at all, he definitely had another reason for buying slaves at twice the price. He wanted to openly give the Shattersteel iron equipment and hidden evil medicinal pills to the Orcs. Most of these were medicinal pills that Zhao Fu gave the Orcs. Hidden evil was a slow poison that ordinary people couldn't detect, and it could kill people if they used it too much. When all of the Orcs used Zhao Fu's equipment and the poison took effect, Zhao Fu would be able to take down the Orc City. When Zhao Fu had first thought of this plan, he had wanted to buy slaves at 10 times the price. However, he felt that Gunador was quite cunning, so he had to be careful. As such, he could only increase the price by 2 times. That was already a lot, and he would find an opportunity to increase the price in the future. As for the Zhou family, Zhao Fu didn't put them in his eyes at all. After experiencing so many things, Zhao Fu felt that he was becoming more and more scheming. However, there was nothing he could do about it, because a naive person would not live long. Zhao Fu only wanted to live and become stronger. Zhao Fu had been thinking about how the first layer of the heavenly domain boundary had been removed and how the Yin soldier had mentioned the legacy land. He felt that something was off and felt that the future was in danger. After returning to Qin City, Zhao Fu received a prompt. Lu Subai's status had been raised to that of a third-rank baron. She had fulfilled the requirements for leveling up to a city. Zhao Fu smiled and thought about who to distribute the achievement points to next. In the end, Zhao Fu decided to give the achievement points to Zhang Da. Before, when Zhao Fu had subdued Zhang Dahu, he had already been the village chief, so he had some achievement points. Now that he had followed Great Qin for so long, Zhang Dahu already had 500 achievement points, so choosing him would save half of his achievement points. "Your Highness," This subordinate has conquered an ordinary village and discovered a new race of outlanders. I've brought 2 people with me. Would your highness like to take a look? Just as Zhao Fu finished distributing the achievement points, Dok walked in with a smile on his face and bowed as he reported. A new race of outlanders? Zhao Fu felt quite curious. These outlanders seemed to be races from Western legends, and they had a mystical quality to them. There was no way he would see such a race in the real world, and he wondered if he would see an ancient race like the one from the east. Bring them in, Zhao Fu said. Dok obeyed and had 2 soldiers bring in 2 outsiders. These 2 outsiders were 15 or 16-year-old girls. Their facial features were exquisite, and their skin was snow white. They looked very cute, but what was different about them was that they had a pair of cat-like ears on their heads, as well as a tail. They were most likely the cat race from Western legends. The 2 girls looked quite similar, and they were most likely twins. The 2 cat race girls were hugging each other, and they looked around nervously with their big eyes, making people want to protect them. Your Highness, are you satisfied? I heard that in the real world you're quite fond of cat women, rabbit women, and fox women. Dok's dog head cracked into a smile. Zhao Fu also laughed. In the real world, cat women, rabbit women, and fox women were all quite popular, and they were incredibly attractive to otakus. I'm quite satisfied, right? Seeing this catwoman, Zhao Fu smiled as he replied. Hearing this, Dok became even happier, causing the 2 cat women to tremble in fear. After all, it was this terrifying kobold who had conquered their village. Zhao Fu looked at their grades and found that they were both a grade. Zhao Fu realized that cats were quite agile. Suddenly, Zhao Fu thought of something and brought them to an empty area. He threw 2 daggers at them and said, "If you can attack me, not only will I spare you, but I'll also spare your clansmen." Through the Lord's translation, the 2 cat women could understand Zhao Fu's words. However, after looking at each other, they were too afraid to attack. Zhao Fu could only pretend to be filled with killing intent as he said coldly, "If you 2 don't attack, I'll give the order to kill you and your entire clan." Hearing Zhao Fu's terrifying words, the 2 cat women's eyes welled up with tears, looking quite pitiful. "What? Do you want to die?" Zhao Fu's expression became cold. This gave the 2 cat women a fright, and they immediately picked up the daggers from the ground. Their bodies trembled, but they did not dare to attack. If they injured the other party, they could die, but if they did not attack, they would also die. With this dilemma, they looked at Zhao Fu. "Hurry up!" Zhao Fu frowned and called out. In the end, the 2 cat women chose to attack. They moved to the left and right and attacked Zhao Fu. As expected of cat women, they were incredibly fast and their footsteps were incredibly light, making almost no sound. Very quickly, one of the cat women appeared on Zhao Fu's right and was about to attack when Zhao Fu stretched out his right hand and grabbed her by the throat, lifting her up. "Big sis!" The other cat woman cried out and also rushed at Zhao Fu. However, just as she got close to Zhao Fu's left hand shot out like a phantom and grabbed her by the throat, lifting her up as well. Dok stood by the side and watched on without any worry. He knew that this would happen. Zhao Fu looked at the 2 cat women and felt quite satisfied. However, the 2 cat women thought that Zhao Fu was going to kill them, and they were so scared that tears started to flow out of their eyes. "You pass." At that moment, Zhao Fu put down the 2 cat women and gave a pleased smile. The 2 cat women's faces were covered in tears and felt quite confused. They did not understand what Zhao Fu meant, but Zhao Fu took out the battle equipment set and handed them to them. Chapter 259. Only after hearing Zhao Fu's explanation did the 2 catwomen understand and take the equipment. Zhao Fu then took them to the assassin historical remnant and had them place their hands on the profession change stone steel. As expected, they successfully became assassins. Come to think of it, in this assassin historical remnant, Zhao Fu had only cleared the second and third levels and unlocked the A-grade and S-grade assassin professions. Currently, most of the assassins under Zhao Fu's control were B-grade, with only 20 or so A-grade assassins and 2 S-grade assassins, Little Sha and Tuoba Qing. Both of them had obtained the complete legacy of the equipment set and had grasped the second transformation of their equipment, while the others needed to gain more experience. Suddenly, Zhao Fu seemed to have forgotten to ask for their names, so he asked, "What are your names?" The older Catwoman, who was the older sister, nervously replied, "I'm called Lacey." She then pointed at the other Catwoman, who looked somewhat fearful, and said, "She's my little sister, Ram." Zhao Fu nodded and looked at the two of them. Right now they were still too weak, so they could only accept the B-grade assassin profession. As such, he had people bring them back and have them train well. At the same time, he had people prepare 2 S-grade orbs for them. Zhao Fu went to the 4th stage of the assassin historical remnant. Just like the previous stages, there was a large door. Zhao Fu pushed open the door and walked in. It was completely dark and silent, and it was even more frightening than the previous stages. At that moment, Zhao Fu stepped out, and it was as if he had walked into some sort of barrier. His surroundings suddenly changed, and Zhao Fu appeared on a large street. The buildings here were all pointed and were Western style, and they gave off a mystical feeling. There were many people on the street, both humans and outlanders. There was an endless stream of people and carriages, and it was incredibly realistic, as if he had arrived in a fantasy-like city. Zhao Fu understood that he had walked into an illusion, and he looked around with interest. One day later, Zhao Fu walked out of the ruins in a somewhat wretched manner. Inside the illusion, Zhao Fu discovered that he could not use any of his equipment, skills, or powers. Most importantly, he had to face the pursuit of various powers. The background of the illusion was the end of an era. Not only did he have to kill people, but he also had to save people. Most importantly, he had to help a new era rise. Zhao Fu had failed to pass this test. This made Zhao Fu sigh. He could only leave the assassin ruins and return to Qin. Time quickly passed, and soon, summer left and autumn came. In the blink of an eye, 20 days had passed. The weather gradually became colder, and the green leaves started to turn yellow. The autumn wind blew, and the heaven-awakened world welcomed autumn. After 20 days of development, Qin had opened up 30 regions in total. These were all regions that he had planned beforehand, and they were the regions that Qin was going to take back. Now there was only one region left. With Seeping River, Valiant Peace, South Leaf, and Open Flask as the 31 regions Qin had to conquer. However, with such a large area, it was easy to imagine how difficult it would be. As such, Zhao Fu had to make all sorts of preparations to help Qin successfully conquer these cities. In the regions that he had opened up, Zhao Fu found 5 legatees. There were 4 that had resisted Qin. The state of Wei from the Warring States period, the state of Qi from the 16 Kingdoms period, the state of Zhou from the 5 Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms period, and the state of Shun established by Li Zicheng at the end of the Ming Dynasty. The 5th was the state of Zheng established by Wang Shichong at the end of the Sui Dynasty. Wang Shichong had been an influential figure at the end of the Sui Dynasty, and he had held a high position during the Sui Dynasty. He had participated in the rebellion against Yang Xiangan, and he had contributed greatly, making his reputation even greater. After Emperor Yang of Sui had been killed, Wang Shichong, Yuan Wendu, Lu Chu, and the others had supported the king of Yu, Yang Tong, as emperor. Wang Shichong had defeated Li Mi and gathered the Wagong generals. That year, Wang Shichong had crippled Yang Tong and proclaimed himself emperor. However, in the end, he had been defeated by Great Tang's Li Shimin, and the state of Zheng had perished. These 5 legatees were massive obstacles that Zhao Fu had to face, and he had to plan carefully to get rid of them one by one. Zhao Fu wanted to get rid of them as soon as possible and clear out Qin's path. After all, they hadn't developed yet, and the most powerful faction that they had to face was still the system main cities. Right now, if Zhao Fu didn't have his nation armament, Zhao Fu wouldn't be able to defend against the system main cities' armies, and he would lose without a doubt. These 5 legatees hadn't developed yet, so they weren't as powerful as the system main cities. However, once they developed, they would be many times more powerful than the system main cities. When that time came, it would be too late for Zhao Fu to deal with them. Right now, Great Qin was in the northern part of the Midland continent, Great Han was in the southern part, Great Shang was in the western part of the Midland continent, Great Zhou was in the eastern part of the Midland continent, and Great Xia was at the center of the Midland continent. The 5 dynasty legatees had already been divided into their own regions, and the other dynasty legatees were in the regions between the 5 dynasty legatees. The system seemed to have already decided who would be in those regions, so there wouldn't be any battles between dynasty legatees right from the start. Only in the later stages would the powerful factions meet. Zhao Fu decided not to talk about these things for now, and turned his attention to Qin. Through conquering other villages and buying people from various regions, as well as the people provided by Orc City, Qin's population had reached 230,000 or so people and 40,000 soldiers. Because Zhao Fu's soldiers had reached stage 0 to 8 or 0 to 9 cultivation, and with the support of the 100 herb pills and blood god pills, Qin now had around 1,500 stage 1 soldiers. The number of stage 1 soldiers was increasing at a rate of 80 per day, and almost all of them were the 5,000 soldiers under Zhao Fu's command. Some of the new soldiers' cultivations weren't very high, only around stage 0 to 5 or stage 0 to 5. If they wanted to raise their stage, it would take a lot of time unless they had a large number of blood god pills. The chaotic world stone steel had also leveled up to level 1, and it could be exchanged for blue-grade items. Leveling up from level 1 to level 2 required 100 war point. In terms of economy, Qin's merchant alliance had already entered 30 regions and was quickly developing. They sold all sorts of items, and they had established their own farms to reduce the cost of selling goods to the lowest possible level. All of this provided Qin with a large amount of financial support. Qin Town had also started to expand in order to accommodate more people, and Rising Qin Academy was also expanding to educate more children and nurture Qin's culture. A true kingdom wasn't just a faction that controlled a large region. If they wanted to have a deep foundation, they had to nurture their own culture. In terms of production, because of the city's stats, only 30% of Zhao Fu's workforce was in the production of food. Most of the people were in the production of various products, such as military equipment and medicinal pills, while most of the people were in other areas. Chapter 260. Over the past few days, Great Shun had developed quite quickly because of Su Yan's guidance. Now, Great Shun had 80,000 people, 40,000 of whom were indigenous residents and 40,000 players. With such a massive number of people, it was enough to become the #1 player faction in Green Apricot. However, in some aspects they were incredibly annoyed by a faction called Evil Fong. Everyone in Great Shun, including Li Mu, hated this faction. Evil Fong. This was the faction that Zhao Fu had established here, and it mainly consisted of hoodlums and hooligans. They used all sorts of methods to disrupt Great Shun. Within Great Shun's restaurant, a few people had been happily eating when they suddenly flipped over the table and cursed, "This food's goddamn disgusting." After yelling, they wanted to go to other tables to continue the conversation, but they were stopped by Great Shun's guards, who were already prepared. Following this, a battle ensued, and those people were easily killed by Great Shun's people. In fact, they hadn't even been able to harm a single person from Great Shun. In actuality, Great Shun's food was quite good, and those people were Evil Fong's people. They used such a despicable method, and those who died had to pay a large sum of money in order to die. Because they were players, they wouldn't truly die. This had happened many times, and Great Shun was prepared for this. However, this method was incredibly disgusting, and seeing the corpses on the ground, how could the people at the surrounding tables have the appetite to eat? They hurriedly paid for their food, and they most likely wouldn't come again. Within Great Shun's pastry shop, a person walked out and ate a few pieces of pastry. Suddenly, he fell to the ground and started foaming at the mouth as his body twitched. Great Shun's pastry is poisoned. Everyone, don't eat it. Look, someone's dying. Someone immediately yelled. This immediately attracted countless people, and they didn't dare to go to Great Shun's pastry shop to buy anything. A beautiful female boss walked out with some people, and she angrily looked at the scene in front of her. Just as she was about to order people to capture the person who was pretending to be dead, the person who had fallen to the ground immediately got up and started to run. The man on the ground knew what was good for him, and immediately got up from the ground and ran. A few guards immediately chased after him, and the beautiful lady boss immediately explained to everyone, trying to regain some of her reputation. However, this had already happened many times. Within Great Shun's equipment shop, Great Shun sold some normal equipment and materials. At that moment, a few people beat drums and gongs as they walked down the street and yelled, "Great Shun's equipment is too trashy, and they're all fake. Everyone, don't be fooled." A few guards immediately rushed out from the equipment shop, wanting to arrest those people. However, those who had shouted immediately turned and ran, and the guards could only curse at them. The boss came out and explained, "Their shop has been set up by a despicable person." Of course, the people who were ruining Great Shun's business were Evil Fong's people. Great Shun had thought of many ways to prevent this from happening, such as sacrificing some of their profits to only do business with indigenous residents. However, Evil Fong had recruited evildoers from the indigenous residents and continued to use all sorts of despicable methods to destroy Great Shun's development. Great Shun wanted to use this sort of despicable method to deal with the faction behind Evil Fong, but they didn't find any of that faction's shops. Zhao Fu had expected this, so he hid his shop well and gave up some of his businesses in Green Apricot. The other large families didn't do much, as they didn't want to sacrifice too much of their own profits and completely resist Great Shun. However, they still tried to suppress Great Shun a bit. After all, they understood that they couldn't allow Great Shun to develop too quickly, or else their families would be destroyed. At the same time, they received some resources from Zhao Fu, so they had to suppress Great Shun a bit. This was the situation with Green Apricot. On that day, Li Mu finally bribed a few of Evil Fong's people and discovered where the faction was gathered. He personally led his people there and kicked open the door. Seeing everyone inside, Li Mu had been suppressing all of the things that these people had done to Great Shun, and today, he finally had an opportunity to catch them all in one fell swoop. Kill them all. Don't leave a single one alive. Li Mu's expression became savage as he roared with killing intent. There were roughly 500 or 600 of Evil Fong's people within the room. Their cultivations weren't very high, as they were just hooligans on the street. However, Li Mu had brought 1,000 of Great Shun's elites, and all of them were at stage 0 to 6 or 0 to 7. After receiving Li Mu's orders, Great Shun's soldiers charged in with their weapons. Evil Fong's people were all terrified and wanted to run, and the battle was completely one-sided. After this battle concluded, all of Evil Fong's people had been killed, while 30 or so people from Great Shun had been injured. Li Mu still wasn't satisfied with the corpses on the ground, and he ordered for these corpses to be hung on trees outside the city. He then said, "This is the fate of anyone who dares to offend Great Shun." The soldiers obeyed and hung 500 or so corpses in a forest outside the city. The corpses were hung from trees with ropes tied to their heads. There were many wounds on their bodies, and they were covered in blood. Coupled with the painful and twisted expressions on their faces before they died, many predatory crows and vultures began to peck at the flesh on their bodies. Such a tragic and terrifying scene scared most people away from it. This matter shocked everyone in Green Apricot, and the large families were so scared that they stopped doing anything against Great Shun. All of the factions fell silent, not daring to make a single sound. Under Li Mu's ferocious might, no one dared to join Evil Fong, and those who were lucky enough to escape also left Evil Fong, not daring to do anything against Great Shun. Evil Fong's faction was completely destroyed. Within Green Apricot, Great Shun's prestige reached its peak, and no one dared to oppose Great Shun. Anyone who encountered Great Shun had to lower their heads, and with 80,000 people, Great Shun had become the unshakable #1 faction in Green Apricot. Li Mu quickly said, "Anyone who cooperates with that mysterious faction or has even the slightest connection with that mysterious faction will be opposing Great Shun, and Great Shun will slaughter their entire family. Remember this, don't seek your own death." These words, which were filled with terrifying killing intent, caused all of the smaller factions related to Zhao Fu to immediately sever all ties with Zhao Fu. The large families also hesitated, and they gathered together to discuss. "What do you all think about this? I think it's best if we don't cooperate with that person. He's just using us. Fighting against Great Shun won't be beneficial to us. We just need to defend our own system main cities and ignore Apricot City. If they have problems, they can deal with them themselves," one of the family leaders said earnestly to the others. The other family leaders also felt that they couldn't go head-on against Great Shun, as this would be incredibly disadvantageous to them. Even if that mysterious person was someone from the Great Ming Dynasty, they were incredibly far away from Great Shun, and they couldn't do anything to Great Shun. As such, everyone agreed with this. Chapter 261. Bang! Zhao Fu slammed his palm hard on the tea table beside him, his face full of anger. Sensing Zhao Fu's anger, the scene immediately quieted down, and the generals all lowered their heads. "What do you guys think?" After a while, Zhao Fu exhaled and calmed the anger in his heart. Bai Qi cupped his hands and bowed as he looked up with a cold gaze and said, "Your Majesty, since Great Shun has publicly declared that anyone who has any relationship with the Qin Empire will be slaughtered, I believe that we should fulfill their wishes and slaughter Great Shun. With the power of the Qin Empire, we should be able to deal with Great Shun." Wang Jian cupped his hands. "Your Highness, this subordinate also believes that with Qin's strength, he'll be able to break through Great Shun and fight with them." Wei Liao thought for a moment before saying, "Your Majesty, this is not the case. I also think that this is feasible. Of the 5 legatees, Great Shun is the closest to Qin, and if we conquer Great Shun, not only will we obtain Great Shun, but we'll also be able to take over Great Shun's faction in Green Apricot and replace it as the #1 faction in Green Apricot. We'll then destroy those two-faced families and completely control Green Apricot." The others also expressed their opinions. Most of them were in favor of fighting, but some didn't. After hearing the opinions of his subordinates, Zhao Fu sank into his thoughts and made the decision to attack Great Shun. However, this matter was incredibly important. After all, it was attacking a legatee, so he had to make a detailed plan and take things step by step. "Guo Binglin, give me all of the information you've gathered on Great Shun," Zhao Fu said before concluding the meeting. Guo Binglin obeyed and left, and he handed all of the information regarding Great Shun to Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu carefully read through the information. A few hours later, he brought a few generals and a large amount of gold to Green Apricot. Within a secret room, Zhao Fu looked at a balding middle-aged man sitting in front of him and asked, "Can you really provide Great Shun's exact address?" This middle-aged man had been with Li Mu from the very beginning, and he was a core member of Great Shun. Even though Zhao Fu knew that Great Shun was roughly 20,000 kilometers to the north of Apricot City, this direction was quite vague. After all, the northern side was incredibly vast, and it would be impossible to find Great Shun so quickly. Moreover, if they sent soldiers to search for Great Shun, they might alert Great Shun, as the legatees were incredibly secretive. The location of the city was incredibly important, and ordinary people would not know where it was. After all, there were teleportation channels, and ordinary people would not know the way or the exact location. Hearing Zhao Fu's words, the middle-aged man nodded, a trace of a pleased smile on his face as he said, "I can guarantee that apart from me, no one else knows where Great Shun is. That boy Li Mu won't be able to keep it a secret. However, you promised me 5,000 gold coins. Is that true?" Zhao Fu lightly laughed and threw out a large bag of gold coins. "This bit of money is nothing to me as long as you give me the position of Great Shun." The middle-aged man excitedly stood up and opened the bag of gold coins. Looking at the glittering gold coins within, a smile blossomed on his face. This bald middle-aged man was called Li Gaola, and in the real world, he was an ordinary white-collar worker. He worked hard his entire life, but he was only able to buy a small house. His wife often despised him for being poor, and he was often scolded by his superiors. With 5,000 gold coins, everything could be changed. 5,000 gold coins was equivalent to 50 million copper coins, which was also equivalent to $500 million in the real world. With this 500 million, he would have everything he wanted. He could buy a villa, divorce that faded old woman at home, marry a young model, and enjoy a happy life. Good, good, good. I'll take you there right now. Li Gaola happily and excitedly said to Zhao Fu. A trace of a smile appeared on Zhao Fu's face, and he personally followed the middle-aged man to find Great Shun. The Great Shun town was hidden behind a large mountain, and it was incredibly difficult to find. The Great Shun town was 3 times the size of a normal town, and its walls were 10 meters tall. It seemed that there was a limit to how tall the walls could be. Normal towns were only 5 or 6 meters tall, while legatees could be 10 or so meters tall. There were well-equipped soldiers patrolling the walls, and there were some heavy crossbowmen. Their battle prowess wasn't something that a normal town could compare to. Apart from the Great Shun town, there were 20 or so villages around it, forming a defensive perimeter. These villages didn't have many people, and they all had less than 300 people. After looking at the Great Shun town, Zhao Fu happily threw the bag of gold coins to Li Gaola. Li Gaola hugged the bag of gold coins and gave an unsightly smile. Just as he was about to exchange the gold coins for money in the real world. "Do you want to obtain more gold coins?" Zhao Fu suddenly asked Li Gaola. Hearing this, Li Gaola stared in surprise before a greedy look appeared in his eyes, and he nodded. Zhao Fu lightly laughed as he said, "Just wait for my news. Don't worry. There'll be plenty of benefits for you." Li Gaola understood and nodded before hugging the bag of gold coins and leaving. Zhao Fu started to carry out other plans. Soon, shocking news spread. The quest stone steals in the 4 main cities announced that anyone who killed a member of Great Shun's Great Shun town would be rewarded with 1 gold coin. This news caused countless people to look shocked. Moreover, everyone found that the quest reward was a prompt reward. In other words, after completing the quest reward would automatically be sent to them through the system. What was even more shocking was that there were 80,000 gold coins in the quest reward bar. In other words, the quest reward could be completed 80,000 times. 1 gold coin could be exchanged for 100,000 real-world dollars, and killing a single person would be enough. After all, this wasn't the real world, and there were no restrictions or punishments for killing people here. Many people were used to seeing death here. A reward of 100,000 gold coins for killing a single person was quite high, and this made countless people feel quite tempted. Everyone felt quite curious as to which faction would be so rich to be able to take out 80,000 gold coins at once. 80,000 gold coins. Could it be a player? In the real world, that's 8 billion gold coins. Could it be that the system faction couldn't stand the sight of Great Shun and decided to use money to kill it? Otherwise, how could they take out so many gold coins? This news caused the 4 families who had betrayed Great Shun to feel quite regretful. They understood that Zhao Fu was going to act against Great Shun, but it was a pity that they had underestimated Zhao Fu's determination. What should we do now? The aristocratic families had worried looks on their faces as they gathered together to discuss. The Dong family's leader was a beautiful young woman, and she let out a long sigh. We underestimated the Great Ming dynasty. If they really act against Great Shun, even if Great Shun doesn't die, they'll be heavily injured. Should we not rely on them? Chapter 262. Within a room, Zhao Fu looked at the 4 family leaders and asked, "Why have you all come to find me?" Hearing this, the 4 family leaders felt quite awkward, but one of them shamelessly said, "Young Master Zhu, it was our fault for not being able to see the situation clearly. The 4 of us were blind and didn't see the situation clearly. Please forgive us. We'll definitely go all out to attack Great Shun, so please trust us." Zhao Fu coldly laughed inwardly. Trust them? Was he really that stupid? These families put their own interests above all else. However, on the surface, Zhao Fu kept a smile on his face and said magnanimously, "That's no big deal, I understand. However, I hope that this won't happen again." Hearing these simple words, the 4 family leaders were delighted and understood that Zhao Fu was willing to cooperate with them. As such, they hurriedly nodded and said, "Don't worry, young Master Zhu, there won't be a next time." Zhao Fu didn't believe that there wouldn't be a next time. If the situation was disadvantageous to him, these 4 people would definitely betray him again. The reason Zhao Fu accepted them was because he wanted to get rid of Great Shun first, and then deal with the other 2 families. Otherwise, if the 6 families allied together, it would be quite difficult to deal with them. Elsewhere, Li Mu also received news that 10 or so people from Great Shun had been killed, and the death toll was continuously rising. Li Mu immediately stopped all of his businesses and sent all of his people back to Great Shun. These greedy people would do anything for money. Even if Great Shun had great power, there were still people who couldn't resist the temptation. 1 gold coin was worth 100 silver coins, 100 silver coins were worth 10,000 copper coins, and 10,000 copper coins were worth $100,000 in the real world. Now, all of the large families were selling their goods to exchange for items in the Heaven Awakened world. This was because after the Heaven Awakened world devoured the real world, those items would become useless. As such, the prices of items were incredibly high, unlike in games. Li Mu immediately called Su Yan to tell him about this. Su Yan frowned and said, "Why did you break the status quo? Great Shun isn't a match for that mysterious faction, and we should focus on quickly developing. Doing this will only harm Great Shun." Li Mu felt quite unconvinced as he said, "Great Shun is already the #1 faction in Green Apricot, and no one dares to casually make a move against Great Shun. That mysterious faction is just an outsider faction, and Great Shun's foundation is in Green Apricot. I don't think Great Shun will lose." Hearing this, Su Yan snorted coldly. "If I tell you that the mysterious force is Qin, would you still think so? Right now there's only one choice, which is to abandon all resources and people and relocate the Great Shun town to another region." After speaking, Su Yan hung up the phone. To him, this chess piece was already useless. Qin. Li Mu was shocked and a chill ran down his spine. A trace of fear arose in his heart. How could this force belong to Qin? Isn't Qin in East Green? He's so far away, but Su Yan wouldn't lie to him. Suddenly, only then did Li Mu realize that the phone had been hung up. He hurriedly called back, but it showed that no one answered, which made Li Mu's heart sink. Are we really going to give up on everything and relocate the Great Shun town to another region? This was equivalent to crippling Great Shun. A legacy village wasn't like an ordinary legacy village that could be relocated. Once a legacy village was relocated, its fate would decrease by 2/3, and its grade would drop by a grade. In other words, Great Shun's city creation stone would fall from gold grade to silver grade. Also, is Great Shun really going to give up on everything it's built up? Li Mu was really unwilling to give up. Li Mu immediately gathered all of his subordinates to discuss this matter. Li Guo, Lu Zhongmin, Red Lady, and Niu Jingxing were all Great Shun's generals, and Niu Jingxing was an SS grade general while the other 3 were S grade generals. Niu Jingxing thought about it and advised, "Your Highness, I think we should give up on everything for now and move to other places to develop." Li Mu also wanted to relocate Great Shun. However, if Great Shun was relocated, it would be equivalent to crippling Great Shun. How could he do that? Perhaps Qin wasn't that powerful, and Green Apricot was his home ground. He might not necessarily lose. In the end, after thinking about all of this, Li Mu made up his mind and started to discuss how to deal with Qin. Following this, Green Apricot released a piece of news saying, "He's accepting members without any restrictions, and he'll be rewarded with 1 gold coin for every person he kills." Doesn't he have money? Let's see just how much money he has. Green Apricot had 6 million players, and Li Mu didn't believe that Qin had that much money. After hearing this, most people weren't stupid, and they knew that if they joined Great Shun, they would be used as meat shields. However, some people wanted to take advantage of the situation. After all, players wouldn't actually die, so 2 people would work together. One person would join Great Shun while the other person would kill them. After all, the rewards were simply too tempting. As such, many people joined Great Shun, wanting to use this method to earn money. Just like that, the number of players joining Great Shun instantly increased by 100,000. This made Li Mu feel delighted before. He already had 80,000 people, 40,000 of whom were indigenous residents and 40,000 players. Now that he's added another 100,000 people, he has 180,000 people in total. With 180,000 people, why would he be afraid of Qin? What's more, the number of players continuously increased. Half a day later, another 100,000 players had joined Great Shun. It could be seen just how greedy and insane these players were. Now, Great Shun had 280,000 players, and with these people, Li Mu felt that he wouldn't have to fear anyone. At the same time, the number of people joining Great Shun continuously increased. However, was this always going to be the case? Of course not. After all, some people found that the quest to kill Great Shun's members had an additional condition, which was that those who had joined Great Shun recently didn't count. This caused the countless players who had joined Great Shun to feel greatly disappointed, and they immediately chose to leave Great Shun. Even when Li Mu promised to give them preferential treatment, they refused. After all, without any tangible benefits, who would want to risk their lives? The 200,000 players who had joined Great Shun were like an ocean tide, quickly coming and quickly leaving. The 40,000 players who had been recalled by Great Shun also started to act strangely. They weren't indigenous residents and were completely loyal to Great Shun. Now that Great Shun was in a disadvantageous situation, they could only hole up in the Great Shun town and couldn't go anywhere else, as they could be killed at any moment. They could endure this for a while, but they couldn't allow this to continue. Players were snobbish, so they started to leave Great Shun. Li Mu had wanted to kill a few people to intimidate them, but he found that this wasn't effective against players. After all, they wouldn't actually die, and killing them would instead cause the players to retaliate. In the end, he could only watch as Great Shun's players continuously decreased. Chapter 263. After speaking, Zhao Fu threw over a few large bags filled with gold coins. The 10 or so people excitedly took the bags and looked at the gold coins inside before quickly nodding and agreeing to Zhao Fu's orders. These 10 or so people were all leaders of Great Shun's players. Players were unreliable, and there were no punishments for going back on their word. Perhaps only after the heaven-awakened world devoured the real world and their lives were truly in danger would they become loyal. Li Mu didn't trust players too much, so he only arranged for a few leaders. The core members of his faction were still indigenous residents, or he personally controlled them. He wouldn't give any power to players. Time gradually passed, and soon it was the third day. Great Shun's situation was quite bleak, and almost everyone hid within the Great Shun town. This was because the reward for killing Great Shun's members had been increased to 2 gold coins per person, making people even crazier. Great Shun's 40,000 players had been forced to retreat, and only 7,000 remained. 2,000 of them were completely loyal to Great Shun, while the other 5,000 were people that Zhao Fu had bribed. This was all because of the 10 or so leaders, who had incited others to betray Great Shun. This made Li Mu feel quite pleased that so many players were willing to follow him. Zhao Fu felt that it was time to act, and he had Qin's soldiers enter Green Apricot in batches. This had to be covered up, or else if so many soldiers entered Green Apricot, they might attract the attention of the system main cities. This is for you. Zhao Fu took out a small bottle of medicine and a bag of money and handed them to Li Gaola. Li Gaola held the bag of money in one hand and the bottle of medicine in the other, looking quite hesitant. He felt quite conflicted about Zhao Fu telling him to poison Li Mu. He understood that Li Mu had some power in the real world, and revealing Great Shun's location was already a big risk. Now that he wanted to poison him, he had completely offended him, and Li Mu definitely wouldn't let him off. Seeing this, Zhao Fu understood what Li Mu was thinking, and he calmly smiled as he said, "After this is done, I'll give you 10,000 gold coins. I'll give you 10,000 gold coins." This caused all of the hesitation on Li Gaola's face to disappear. 10,000 gold coins was 1 billion gold coins, and with this money, he could escape from Great Shun, and Li Mu wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Li Gaola smiled and nodded as he agreed. Night. It was pitch black all around, and there were a few stars twinkling in the sky. There was also a crescent moon that gave off a faint moonlight, and it seemed as if some ferocious beast had appeared in the forest. It gave off a powerful aura, causing all of the surrounding insects to stop chirping, and it was terrifyingly quiet. Zhao Fu and his 40,000 soldiers killed some of Great Shun's sentries and came to a few kilometers away from the Great Shun town. They first had to deal with the villages around the Great Shun town. These villages were a few kilometers away from the Great Shun town, but with them blocking his way, Zhao Fu couldn't go around them. As such, he could only choose to break through. This time, Zhao Fu had made all the necessary preparations and had brought over 3,000 assassins. It was around 10 p.m., and most of the villagers were asleep. Just like in ancient times, there were not many activities to pass the time at night, so they only rested after sunset. Zhao Fu ordered the 3,000 assassins to sneak into these villages and kidnap those who they could and kill those who they couldn't. Zhao Fu left a portion of his soldiers here in case they were attacked by these villages when they attacked the Great Shun town. They stealthily advanced until they were close to the Great Shun town. Zhao Fu wasn't in a hurry to act, and he instead waited for an opportunity. Within the Great Shun town, Li Gaola and a few others carried a few plates of food to Li Mu's residence. In actuality, these legatees had made preparations to prevent assassinations, and this was especially so for the Lord's food. Li Gaola had killed the people who had delivered the food, or else he wouldn't have found an opportunity to poison the food. Because the indigenous residents were loyal to Li Mu, they couldn't find other indigenous residents to deliver the food, and they could only deliver the food themselves. Normally, some people would have noticed this, but because of the current situation, everyone's attention was focused on how to deal with the current situation, so no one noticed Li Gaola. Moreover, Li Gaola was one of Li Mu's old subordinates, so he trusted him quite a bit. As such, they were able to successfully deliver the food to Li Mu's room. Right now, Li Mu was feeling quite depressed as he drank wine. Within his embrace lay a beautiful woman. She was the boss of the pastry shop. Because of her superior looks, she had long since become Li Mu's woman. When Li Gaola and the others brought the food in, Li Mu didn't pay much attention to them. He poured himself a cup of wine and prepared to drink it. This caused Li Gaola and the others to feel quite delighted. They had never thought that their plan would succeed so easily. However, at that moment, the boss in Li Mu's embrace stopped him and said worriedly, "That's enough, Your Majesty. Don't drink like this, it'll harm your body." Li Mu stopped and let out a long sigh as he said, "If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have believed that bastard Su Yan's words. Now that we're being targeted by Qin, I'm afraid that Great Shun will perish in my hands. Let's wait a few more days. If things don't improve, we'll have to relocate Great Shun." The boss of the pastry shop lightly nodded and hugged Li Mu. She looked up at Li Mu and said, "No matter where Your Majesty goes, I'll follow you. I believe that Your Majesty will be able to restore Great Shun and even surpass your ancestors." Li Mu roared with laughter, raised his glass again, and was about to drink. This caused Li Gaola and the others, who had just calmed down, to once again become nervous. "Your Majesty, don't drink anymore. You've drunk enough today, and I'm worried about you." Suddenly, the boss in Li Mu's embrace cut him off. This caused the hearts of Li Gaola and the others to sink even further. When Li Mu heard the boss, he lightly laughed and stopped. He looked up and saw Li Gaola and the others, and he frowned as he asked, "Why did you bring food here?" Li Gaola felt quite startled, and he smiled as he said, "This subordinate was on his way here, so I brought some food as well." "Is that so?" Li Mu thought for a moment before raising his head. A cold light shot out of his eyes as he looked at Li Gaola and the others, and he ordered the guards beside him, "Capture them." Li Gaola and the others immediately understood that their plan had been exposed, and they turned to run. However, they were surrounded by the guards, and they could only resist. However, they were killed by the guards in the end. After Li Gaola died and returned to the real world, he immediately took a large amount of money and boarded a plane to another country. Within the Heaven Awakened world, Li Mu's expression was cold, and he felt that something was off. He ordered all of his soldiers to gather and head to the player faction's territory. The 10 or so leaders had been waiting for news from Li Gaola this entire time, so they quickly found out that Li Gaola had failed, and that Li Mu had gathered all of his soldiers. The 5,000 players could only pick up their weapons and charge towards the city gate. The entire Great Shun town immediately fell into chaos, and cries sounded out everywhere as fires broke out in many places. Chapter 264. Swish, swish, swish. First, flaming arrows streaked through the sky like a rain of fire, landing within the Great Shun town. Soon, some places were set ablaze, causing sparks to appear. "Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Enemy attack!" Shouts sounded out, causing the entire Great Shun town to become even more chaotic. Li Mu felt quite startled and thought of something, and he yelled, "Stop!" Li Mu's soldiers all stopped, and the opposing players looked at each other, not knowing why Li Mu had suddenly given the order to stop. Both sides had just started fighting, and both sides had suffered casualties. Because the defectors' cultivation and equipment couldn't compare to Great Shun soldiers, they had lost 1,600 people, and only 3,400 of their original 5,000 remained. On Li Mu's side, 400 people had died. Because there were too many defectors, they were only slightly weaker in terms of cultivation. Li Mu looked at the 10 or so leaders and yelled with a cold expression, "Great Shun has treated you well, right? I don't care what you've done in the past, but now that you've helped Great Shun get through this crisis, you can take all of Great Shun's items." The 10 or so leaders were quite tempted. Their main goal was profit, and since Zhao Fu had given them more, they would naturally join Zhao Fu. Now that Great Shun's conditions were even more tempting, of course they were tempted. Moreover, if they continued to resist, it was possible that they would all be killed by Li Mu, which wouldn't be worth it. Then how can you guarantee that you'll keep your word? The 10 or so leaders looked at each other before yelling at Li Mu. Hearing this, Li Mu coldly replied, "I'll swear an oath in the name of Great Shun, all right?" The 10 or so leaders nodded and agreed. The oaths made by Great Shun's factions couldn't be compared to those made by ordinary people. This concerned the reputation of a nation, and it was possible that they would be laughed at by the rest of the world. Zhao Fu looked at the Great Shun town's town walls and saw that there weren't many soldiers. This was because Li Mu had sent most of his soldiers to deal with the players. However, Zhao Fu wouldn't let go of this opportunity, and he continued to attack. 300 ghost illusionists came to the northern side of the Great Shun town and started to unleash the dark ghost world. Traces of ghostly qi rose up from the ground, and an eerie and cold aura spread out, covering the town. The 300 ghost summoners simultaneously pressed their hands against the ground and roared, causing ghostly qi to erupt from the ground. Ferocious-looking ghosts appeared, turning into rays of light as they rushed towards the Great Shun town and quickly leapt onto the town walls. Now, the devil ghosts had become powerful siege weapons, and their ability to climb city walls was something that ordinary soldiers couldn't compare to. After climbing up the city walls, the 300 devil ghosts started to fight with Great Shun's soldiers. Bai Qi, Wei Liao, and Wang Jian led their soldiers towards the Great Shun town from the east, west, and west. They drew their general armaments and pointed them towards the sky as they shouted, "Soldier Aura Formation." Boom, boom, boom. 3 massive explosions sounded out as a blood-red, black, and green pillar of light shot into the sky, giving off a massive aura that shook the surrounding hundreds of kilometers. From a distance, the 3 pillars of light gave off a shocking aura as they stood between the heavens and the earth, giving off a brilliant blood-red, black, and green light. Wherever the clouds gathered, the sky would become a vast expanse of white, looking incredibly eye-catching in the darkness of the night. It was as if a layer of white had been added to a pitch-black curtain of darkness. The 7 Murders Star, Voracious Wolf Star, and Army Destroyer Star gathered together, giving off a terrifying aura that caused all creatures in the surrounding 100 kilometers to run for their lives. The city lords of Green Apricot's 4 system main cities also sensed the ripples here, and they looked over. The sky above the Great Shun town gave off a white light, making it seem as if it was daytime. All of the soldiers charging towards the Great Shun town gave off different colored auras. These auras quickly gathered towards Bai Qi, Wei Liao, and Wei Liao, forming 3 different colored cocoons above them. Scree! An ear-piercing screech could be heard as a blood-colored eagle emitting a boundless killing aura broke out of the blood cocoon and charged out. It had a pair of huge wings, steel-like claws, and a pair of sharp eyes that seemed to be able to see through everything. Roar! A massive roar suddenly sounded out, causing countless leaves to fall as a black tiger giving off a terrifying conquering aura broke out of the black cocoon. Its massive and mighty body, sharp claws, and ferocious aura seemed to be able to shake the surroundings. Roar! A howl tore through the clouds as a green wolf giving off a strange aura broke out of the green cocoon and leapt out. It raised its head to the sky and howled. Its massive, supple body and sharp fangs gave off an aura that could cause people's hearts to tremble in fear. Just as Li Mu gave out orders for the soldiers to go and defend the town, he suddenly saw these 3 beasts. Sensing their auras, he was greatly shocked. It really is Qin. By now, Li Mu was completely certain that this was Qin. After all, the Voracious Wolf Star's 7 Murders Army Destroyer Star had appeared before, and only Qin possessed them. When he thought of that, Li Mu felt incredibly bitter. The 3 massive beasts appeared in the east, south, and west of Great Shun, and as soon as they appeared, they charged towards Great Shun. Their massive bodies slammed into Great Shun's town walls, causing the ground to tremble. At the center of Great Shun's town hall, a golden cube gave off a dirt-yellow energy and attached itself to the town walls, defending against the three beasts' attacks. However, the three beasts were simply too powerful, and some cracks still appeared on the town walls. The three beasts quickly retreated, and their ferocious auras once again slammed into the town walls. If they slammed into the town walls, it was possible that the town walls would collapse. Li Mu understood that he couldn't continue like this, and he seemed to have made an important decision. He raised his sword high into the air and roared, "I, Great Shun's son of heaven!" Boom! A shocking explosion sounded out as a massive dirt-yellow light shot into the sky, dyeing the entire sky a dirt-yellow color. Roar! A massive dragon's roar sounded out, shaking the surroundings as a 100-meter-long dragon that gave off a dirt-yellow light appeared in the sky. As soon as the dragon appeared, its massive aura spread out, and the earthen yellow light that it gave off an incredibly noble aura. As it shined in all directions, the ghostly chi to the north of the Great Shun town gradually dissipated, and the evil ghosts that the ghost summoners had summoned looked incredibly afraid. At the same time, this dragon that gave off a brilliant dirt-yellow light caused the blood-red eagle, black tiger, and green wolf to stop in their tracks. This was a fate dragon, and this dragon's roar caused the city lords in the surroundings to feel quite startled. They knew that something big had happened, and they wanted to personally go over, but they were worried that they would be caught up in the shockwaves. However, in the next moment, something even more shocking happened. Roar! Chapter 265. The massive black dragon gave off a domineering aura that filled the entire heavens and earth, completely suppressing the earthen yellow dragon. The earthen yellow dragon also gave off a powerful dragon's might and resisted, unwilling to admit defeat. Now, the two dragons were in a stalemate in the air. Li Mu was stunned. He looked at the black dragon in the sky and sensed its aura. He knows that the legendary crown prince of Qin is also here. Below the massive black dragon, Zhao Fu raised the sky demon sword and coldly looked at the dirt-yellow dragon. He gathered his power and exploded out with traces of black aura, which flowed into the black dragon's body. He was expending his own fate power. Roar! A deafening dragon's roar sounded out, and it seemed as if the entire sky was trembling. After receiving Zhao Fu's power, the black dragon looked at the earthen yellow dragon and furiously roared, giving off boundless black light. Under this black light, the blood-red eagle, black tiger, and green wolf seemed to receive some kind of power. Their bodies were covered in a faint black light and arcs of black lightning. Roar! The three massive beasts ferociously charged towards the Great Shun town's town walls. Li Mu was given a big fright, and he tried to use his fate dragon to defend, but it was completely suppressed by the black dragon. Boom! The three massive beasts smashed into the town walls with immense power, causing terrifying cracks to appear on the town walls. The Great Shun town's city heart continuously trembled. Boom! Another massive explosion sounded out as the three massive beasts once again crashed into the Great Shun town. The Great Shun town's city heart howled as three of the town walls collapsed, and the three massive beasts rushed into the Great Shun town, wreaking havoc. Qin's soldiers followed behind the three massive beasts, flooding into the Great Shun town and starting a massacre. Great Shun soldiers rushed up and desperately resisted, but in front of the three massive beasts and Qin city soldiers, they were incredibly weak. Seeing this scene, the 3,000 or so players who had surrendered, including the 2,000 players who were loyal to Li Mu, were shaken. They understood that Great Shun's situation was hopeless, so they quickly ran for their lives. It was a pity that they had chosen the wrong direction. They had chosen the north, where the three beasts did not exist. That direction seemed safe, as there were no giant beasts or soldiers. However, the dark ghost world had been set up, and the players were eager to escape, so they all stepped into the area filled with ghost chi. Immediately, it was as if they had arrived in another world. Everything in this world was grayish-white, and there was a gloomy, ghostly moon in the sky. The terrifying howls of evil spirits echoed throughout the surroundings. The players were so scared that they ran for their lives, but they were never able to escape. Li Mu looked at the three beasts with a ruthless look on his face. He raised his sword high and swung it down, breaking free from the black dragon's suppression. With a roar, he flew down from the sky and attacked the three beasts. The divine dragon was 100 meters long, while the three giant beasts were only a dozen meters long. There was a difference in size. At that moment, the dirt yellow dragon opened its mouth and ferociously bit towards the black tiger, forcing Army Destroyer back. It then swept its tail, sending out a massive gale that contained immense destructive power, forcing the greedy wolf back. It then flew into the sky and grabbed towards the blood-red eagle with its claws, forcing the blood-red eagle to dodge. The 7 Murders Star, Voracious Wolf Star, and Army Destroyer Star were blocked by the earthen yellow dragon. However, the three beasts weren't weak either. They roared and worked together to fight the earthen yellow dragon. The dirt yellow dragon opened its mouth and bit towards the Voracious Wolf Star's throat. The Voracious Wolf Star leapt back, dodging this bite. At that moment, the black tiger grasped this opportunity and leapt up, opening its mouth towards the dirt yellow dragon's abdomen. The dirt yellow dragon furiously roared and swung its tail, sending the tiger flying. Scree! The blood-red eagle in the sky dove down, its sharp claws grabbing onto the dirt yellow dragon's body, giving it a powerful blow. At that moment, the dirt yellow dragon twisted its head and used its 2 horns to send the blood-red eagle flying. However, in the next moment, the Voracious Wolf Star once again attacked. The battle was incredibly destructive, and massive explosions sounded out and wild gales swept out. Almost all of the surrounding buildings collapsed, turning them into ruins. However, because of the dirt yellow dragon, Great Shun's collapse slowed down. Suddenly, a massive black dragon rushed into the battle and bit down on the dirt yellow dragon. It then swung the dirt yellow dragon into the sky, looking incredibly domineering and ferocious. The black dragon was twice as big as the dirt yellow dragon, and its body was more corporeal. It looked incredibly savage, and the aura it gave off was even more terrifying, causing the 7 Murders Star, Voracious Wolf Star, and Army Destroyer Star to feel a trace of fear. A black cloaked figure appeared in front of Li Mu. Li Mu's expression became serious as he looked at the cloaked figure in front of him. He knew who this person was. Apart from Emperor Qin, who else could it be? Can you spare Great Shun? I'll give all of Great Shun's people and resources to you, and I swear that I'll never become enemies with Emperor Qin in the future. Since things had come to this, Li Mu didn't want Great Shun to be destroyed in his hands. As such, he spoke to Zhao Fu with a tone of surrender. Zhao Fu lightly laughed. What do you think? Now that things had come to this, how could Zhao Fu spare Great Shun? Zhao Fu wanted all of Great Shun's people, resources, and even Great Shun's legacy. Sparing Great Shun would be equivalent to releasing a tiger back into the mountains, and how could Zhao Fu do such a foolish thing? Hearing Zhao Fu's words, Li Mu knew that there was no turning back, and he could only go all out. Li Mu's expression became savage as he gripped his sword and rushed at Zhao Fu. As the legatee of a kingdom, Li Mu had some strength. His cultivation was on par with Zhao Fu's, but he was still too weak. Boom! Li Mu rushed up and sent all of his cultivation power into his sword, causing it to give off a large amount of sword light. Li Mu gripped his sword and vigorously slashed towards Zhao Fu. However, Zhao Fu stood his ground and didn't move at all. He casually slashed out with a black sword light, and Li Mu's body flew back and crashed into a wall, causing the wall to instantly collapse. Even though Li Mu's cultivation was on par with Zhao Fu's, Zhao Fu had multiple pieces of epic-grade equipment, as well as King's power and various other high-grade powers. His strength was enough to rival Stage 3 experts, But Li Mu didn't have any of these things, so how could he retaliate? After falling to the ground, Li Mu coughed up a mouthful of blood. He had long since heard of how terrifying Qin's legatee's power was, but now that he had personally witnessed it, Li Mu felt incredibly bitter. He truly couldn't retaliate at all. Li Mu looked to the side and saw that the earthen dragon had been completely ravaged by the black dragon. Its body was covered with wounds, and one of its horns had been broken. In the end, Li Mu could only withdraw the earthen dragon and sacrifice his fate to increase its power, hoping to make a final gamble. The earthen dragon returned to Li Mu's body, causing Li Mu to explode out with terrifying power. His body gave off a yellow light that could cause anyone to tremble. Zhao Fu waved his hand, and the black dragon returned to Zhao Fu's body. Traces of black aura rose up from its body as it also exploded out with terrifying power. The terrifying power of the two of them caused the heavens and earth to change, and countless dark clouds gathered, accompanied by the sound of thunder. Arg! Chapter 266. The sword in Li Mu's hand gave off a yellow sword light that looked like a 3-meter-long sword of light. As he swung the sword, it gave off a large amount of sword qi, which formed a sword wind as it slashed towards Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu coldly looked at Li Mu and sent his king's power into the sky demon sword, causing it to give off a black sword light as he raised it to block. Clang! The two swords clashed, resulting in a metallic collision sound. Black and yellow sword light shot out in all directions, and the collision of the two energies created a massive shockwave that caused the ground to crack. Li Mu's expression became savage. He had never thought that his full-powered strike would be so easily blocked by his opponent. He once again roared and activated his fate, causing the yellow light around his body to become even brighter. Li Mu gripped his sword and pressed down towards Zhao Fu. Feeling this power, Zhao Fu stared in surprise before his expression became cold. He vigorously swung his sword, forcing Li Mu back before leaping forwards and stabbing towards Li Mu. Li Mu dodged to the side and stabbed out with his sword. His sword gave off a sharp aura as it stabbed towards Zhao Fu's chest, while Zhao Fu dodged to the side. Li Mu used this opportunity to unleash a massive amount of sword light as he slashed towards Zhao Fu's head. However, Zhao Fu swung his sword upwards, sending Li Mu's sword upwards. He then twisted his body and kicked Li Mu 10 or so meters away. Cough! Li Mu coughed up a mouthful of blood and savagely glared at Zhao Fu. He stabbed his sword into the ground and slowly stood up, and a 10-meter-long earthen dragon appeared around him. Seeing this, Zhao Fu understood that Li Mu was continuously activating his fate. In this world, everyone, from kingdoms to people, had their own fate. Legatees like them had the ability to manifest their own fate, as they had the potential to become kings in the future. At the same time, their fate was much more powerful than ordinary people's, and if they used up their fate, it would greatly affect them, and it could even reduce their lifespan. Li Mu was going all out. Arg! Li Mu's expression was savage as he gripped his sword with both hands and roared. A yellow aura flame appeared around his body, and arcs of lightning appeared around him as a formless energy spread out, causing the ground in the surrounding 100 meters to cave in. Zhao Fu was given a big fright and leapt back. He looked at Li Mu, who was still activating his fate, and yellow arcs of lightning continuously flashed out. The ground continued to crack, and the aura he gave off became more and more dangerous. You want to decide this in one move? Zhao Fu also had the same thoughts, and he raised the sky demon sword. A black dragon that was 10 or so meters long floated out of Zhao Fu's body, and it was even more corporeal than Li Mu's earth dragon. Since his opponent was using fate of Zhao Fu's fate, and a 10-meter-long black lightning appeared around his body. Of Qi and of Zhao Fu of Qi Mu, caused his body to become a black. The two of them gave off terrifying auras as they faced each other, forming the center of a storm. Wood and rocks were all blown high into the air, and wooden houses started to sway. No one dared to get close. Arg! Li Mu's roar came to an end, and at the same time, a destructive shock wave rippled out. Li Mu's sword was no longer shapeless, and it could only be seen that he was holding an orb of blinding yellow light. Countless arcs of lightning gathered around him, and the ground beneath his feet crumbled every second. Boom! In the end, Li Mu slashed out with his sword, and a massive explosion sounded out, causing the entire world to tremble. A 10-meter-long dragon-shaped sword chi gave off a brilliant yellow light, illuminating the entire heavens and earth. A sword wind swept out, and the dragon-shaped sword chi gave off world-destroying power as it slashed towards Zhao Fu. The space around it seemed to twist, and a deep ravine appeared in the ground. At that moment, Zhao Fu also attacked. He roared as he raised his sword and shot out a black ray of light towards the sky. As if it had been summoned, a massive violet star broke through the sky's restrictions and descended. The violet star gave off a dazzling light, and it was extremely conspicuous in the dark night. A wisp of violet chi descended from the star and merged into Zhao Fu's sword. The sword in Zhao Fu's hand gave off a black and violet light, and a powerful and noble aura spread out. At that moment, the massive dragon-shaped sword chi arrived in front of Zhao Fu with a destructive aura. At this moment of life and death, Zhao Fu's lips curled up into a smile. He waved the sword in his hand, and a simple arc of light flashed by. The massive dragon-shaped sword chi was split into two and dissipated between heaven and earth. Li Mu was stunned. He didn't think that the earth-shattering sword chi would be turned into nothingness by Zhao Fu with such a simple sword strike. Suddenly, Li Mu felt a pain in his chest. He looked down and didn't know when, but there was a long wound on his chest. Fresh blood flowed out of the wound, and Li Mu fell to the ground. Zhao Fu had a smile on his face. The reason why he had been able to deal with Li Mu so easily was because his fate had acknowledged him as the true son of heaven. Li Mu was just a fake son of heaven. Zhao Fu walked over with his sword in hand and found that Li Mu was covered with blood and was on his last breath. His eyes were filled with pleading as he looked at Zhao Fu. This caused Zhao Fu to pause because Zhao Fu understood what Li Mu meant. Li Mu was pleading with him to spare Great Shun. This made Zhao Fu feel a bit hesitant, but after thinking about it, if their positions were reversed, would Li Mu spare Qin? When he thought of that, Zhao Fu's gaze became cold, and he raised his sword. Li Mu also understood, and his pleading eyes became hateful as he stared at Zhao Fu. It was as if he wouldn't spare Zhao Fu even if he turned into a ghost. Pooh! Zhao Fu's sword descended, killing Li Mu. Everyone in the Great Shun town received this system announcement and felt incredibly sorrowful. Great Shun had fallen. Your Majesty! A cry sounded out as a heroic-looking female general dressed in red armor and holding a red tasseled spear rushed over. She was most likely one of Great Shun's historical generals, and she was called Red Lady. Red Lady rushed over and looked at the dead Li Mu on the ground. Her eyes became bloodshot as she hatefully looked at Zhao Fu, who was next to Li Mu's corpse. I'm going to kill you! Red Lady roared as she gripped her spear and rushed at Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu coldly looked at the female general in front of him and casually waved his hand. A sharp arc of light flashed out, and blood spurted out as a head flew into the air. Red Lady's headless corpse powerlessly fell to the ground. These historical generals were 100% loyal to their masters, so it was impossible to subdue them. As such, Zhao Fu could only choose to kill them. Originally, Qin had completely suppressed Great Shun, and with Li Mu's death, nothing unexpected would happen. In this battle, Zhao Fu had suffered heavy losses. Nearly 3,000 people had died and 15,000 people had been injured. All of Great Shun's soldiers and generals had died, and because Great Shun was a legatee, the residents were all incredibly loyal. As such, even after Li Mu died, they still stubbornly resisted. Of the 30,000 or so residents, only 3,000 remained after Zhao Fu slaughtered them. Chapter 267. Seeing this Rubik's Cube, Zhao Fu couldn't help but feel excited. After all, this was the legacy of a nation's city heart. This sort of thing couldn't be bought with money, it could be said to be a priceless treasure. Walking forward, Zhao Fu placed his hand on the Rubik's Cube and gave a prompt. Do you want to occupy it? Of course, Zhao Fu chose to do so. Occupy. Immediately, the city creation stone exploded out with a yellow light that shot into the sky, dyeing the entire sky yellow. Roar. A massive dragon's roar turned into a corporeal sound wave that sounded throughout the entire northern part of the continent. This dragon's roar was filled with pain, unwillingness, and grief. All of the powers in the northern part of the continent were shocked, and they all rushed out to look in the direction of the voice. They knew what it meant. A nation's legacy was about to be destroyed. The destruction of a legatee so quickly caused the northern side of the Midland continent to become even more unstable. Zhang Hing rode on his donkey with a serious expression as he looked towards the great Shun town, thinking about something. Su Yan let out a long sigh. He had received news that Great Shun had fallen. Green Apricot and the other 3 city lords inwardly sighed. At the same time, they rejoiced that they hadn't participated in this battle, or else the consequences would have been unimaginable. Back in the sky above the great Shun town, the 100-meter-long yellow dragon gave a mournful cry and struggled a few times in the air before its massive body gradually disintegrated into motes of light and disappeared. Notification. After Great Shun was destroyed, the fate that it represented was devoured by Qin, and Qin obtained a large amount of fate. Notification. Qin destroyed Great Shun and obtained all of Great Shun's legacy. Notification. Qin's city heart is evolving. It's currently 1/10 complete. Notification. Qin Town has obtained 1/5 of the Great Shun Town's stats. Notification. The Nation Armament 12 Metal Colossi has evolved and leveled up to level 3. Notification. The Clan Armament, the Imperial Ruler's Seal, has evolved into a level 2 clan armament. Notification. You have conquered a town with a kingdom's legacy. You have obtained 2,000 achievement points. After hearing these system announcements, Zhao Fu was delighted. The fate that Qin had used up had been completely recovered after devouring Great Shun's fate, and he would be able to use his nation armament again. Following this, Zhao Fu obtained all of Great Shun's legacies. In other words, Great Shun's soldiers, historical figures who hadn't awakened, and heaven prayer platforms would all belong to Qin. Great Shun's military profession was E- grade, which was slightly weaker than Qin's military profession. Zhao Fu didn't pay too much attention to this, but there was a special military profession for Great Shun. Adventurer Soldier, grade D- grade military description. The brave soldiers of the former Adventurer King, effects, receives the basic skill Brave and Fearless. This unit was an infantry unit, and the weapon they used was a saber. It was a pretty good unit among the infantry, and it was a very ferocious unit. As for how many historical figures had yet to awaken, Zhao Fu did not know, nor did he know who. The 4 historical generals had been killed by Zhao Fu. The Great Shun Town's Heaven Prayer Platform's stats were slightly weaker than Qin's, but the Great Shun Heaven Prayer Platform's stats could be stacked with Qin's Heaven Prayer Platform stat. Heaven Prayer Platform, a special structure of a nation legacy. It can level up with a village. Special stats. Resistance to natural disasters plus 35%, chance of spawning S grade or above villagers plus 15%. After conquering the Great Shun Town, Qin's city heart also received a system announcement that it had evolved. Now, Qin's city heart was legendary grade, and it gave a 1/10 increase after conquering a nation legacy. It seemed that after conquering 10 more nation legacies, Qin's town would become epic grade. Following this, Qin's town had obtained 1/5 of the Great Shun Town's stats. From this, it seemed that the more nation legacies Qin conquered, the more stat bonuses it would receive. There was also the nation armament and clan armament. When Zhao Fu had obtained the Myrtle Imperial Star, these two items had already evolved, and now, they had fused with Great Shun's fate. Great Shun's fate wasn't simple at all. It had overthrown the Great Ming Dynasty and obtained a lot of fate. Finally, Zhao Fu received 3,000 achievement points. Ordinary towns only gave 500 achievement points, which meant that he had received 6 times the achievement point. However, thinking about how this was a nation legacy town, Zhao Fu felt that it wasn't enough. Adding on the king's ring, Zhao Fu received 6,000 achievement points, which was enough to instantly raise his status to a first-ranked viscount. Because Zhao Fu had given the achievement points to Zhang Dahu, his status was now the same as Zhao Fu's. At the same time, leveling up to a basic city required 3 barons or above. Now only EXP was left. Right now, Qin's town was only an intermediate town and hadn't leveled up to an advanced town yet. Your Majesty, everything has been taken care of. Everything has been taken care of. How will your Highness deal with the 5,000 or so players who were trapped in the Dark Ghost realm? At that moment, Bai Qi walked in and cupped his hands as he asked Zhao Fu for instructions. Zhao Fu paused and lightly laughed as he said, "Bai Qi, how will you deal with them?" Bai Qi didn't hesitate, and his expression became cold as he said, "These traitors have no loyalty at all, and they went back on their word and betrayed Qin's town at a critical moment. This lowly general believes that these 5,000 or so players should all be beheaded." Zhao Fu nodded and brought Bai Qi to the plaza. There were many players kneeling there, and they were all tied up with ropes. They looked at the soldiers around them with expressions of fear. When the 10 or so leaders saw Zhao Fu walk out, they immediately yelled, "Young Master Zhu, we're your people as well. Why did you tie us up? We wanted to congratulate you for taking down the Great Shun town." Haha, did they really think that he didn't know what they were doing? Zhao Fu laughed and said, "There's no need to congratulate me. In a bit, I'll send you off." Zhao Fu emphasized the last 2 words, but the 10 or so leaders didn't understand. They thought that they were safe, and they smiled as if they had just survived a disaster. "Go and prepare the ropes." Zhao Fu turned and gave the order. Bai Qi felt quite confused, but he still went to carry out Zhao Fu's orders. Following this, Zhao Fu led the soldiers to take the 5,000 or so Great Shun players to the forest where Evil Fang's 500 or so corpses had been hung. After coming here, the players all felt that something was off. The 10 or so leaders smiled stiffly as they said, "Young Master Zhu, didn't you want us to leave?" Zhao Fu gave a calm smile as he replied, "I'm sending you off." The soldiers obeyed Zhao Fu's orders and pushed the players to the trees. They then tied ropes around their necks, and no matter how stupid the players were, they understood what was going on. They first cried and begged, but they soon started cursing and swearing. Chapter 268. Zhao Fu stood by the side and calmly watched on. The 5,000 or so players' hands were tied up and there was a rope around their neck. Their bodies were suspended in the air, and their faces were red as they coughed and choked as their legs flailed about. Soon, the 5,000 or so players stopped struggling and were all hung to death. The forest fell silent, and the atmosphere became quite strange. Bai Qi watched from the side and saw that Zhao Fu's expression was completely calm as he stood in front of the 5,000 or so players. Bai Qi couldn't help but feel that he didn't understand Zhao Fu at all. Collect the corpses with high grades and hang the useless corpses on the mountain. Also, hang Li Mu's corpse at the very front. That's what they did to Qin and said that they would exterminate Qin's entire family. After saying this, Zhao Fu lightly laughed. "Yes." Bai Qi cautiously obeyed and ordered his people to hang the corpses on the trees. In total, 50,000 corpses filled the entire mountain, and the entire forest seemed to have lost all of its vitality. It gave off an eerie and cold aura, and none of the insects, birds, or beasts dared to stay in this place filled with deathly aura. The corpses hung on the trees all had pained expressions on their faces. This was especially so for the 5,000 or so players who had been hung to death. Their tongues were hanging out, and their eyes were rolled back, making them look incredibly terrifying. Adding on the eerie mountain, this place looked like a mountain of corpses, and faint howls could be heard, making it seem as if this was hell on earth. The next day, the sky was a deep blue without a single cloud, and it seemed that the sun was about to rise over the mountain. Arg! 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 Cries of terror sounded out as dozens of players who had just left the system main cities saw corpses strewn across the mountain ridge. The scene of 50,000 or so corpses caused even players who had seen a lot of things to cry out in fear. This matter immediately spread, and countless players were shocked. Some even went over to take a look, and they found that the corpse at the very front was Li Mu's. The number 1 faction in Green Apricot, Great Shun, had been slaughtered in a single night. How could they not be shocked? Even though the 4 system main city factions knew what had happened last night, they had never thought that it would be so bloody. This news quickly spread into the real world, and countless factions were greatly shocked. They understood that Great Shun had been destroyed last night, but what made them even more terrified was that the faction that had destroyed Great Shun was Qin. Before, the power that Qin had shown was just the power of some inheritance. No one had seen how strong Qin's military power was. Now, he had finally seen it for himself. However, not only was Qin baring his fangs, but he had also opened his mouth and swallowed the legacy of a nation. It's also rumored that Qin is in East Green. Green Apricot is a few regions away from him. Could it be that Qin can already fight across regions? This incident caused panic throughout the entire northern region of the continent. As for the Qin Resistance Alliance, after hearing that Great Shun had been destroyed, they immediately disbanded. They understood what Qin was trying to do by conquering Great Shun. By now, the remaining 3 factions felt incredibly regretful. They were worried that Qin would make a move against them, so they immediately sent people to the Ing family to express goodwill and apologize, promising that they wouldn't become enemies with Qin. The Ing family didn't say anything about this, and they were incredibly delighted. Now that Qin had taken down a nation's legacy so quickly, they had witnessed Qin's true power and his bright future. At the same time, news of what had happened outside of Apricot City spread, and many people who liked Great Qin started to feel disgusted. They felt that Great Qin was simply too cruel and merciless. It had slaughtered 50,000 or so people, and the 5,000 or so players had been hanged to death, which made their hair stand on end. In the real world, 10 or so people dying would be enough to shake a nation, let alone 50,000 or so people. They felt that Qin's methods were simply too cruel and bloody. Before, Qin had been the most glorious figure in the world, and he had shocked many countries. They felt that he was domineering, and they were proud to be Chinese. However, after seeing how cruel and merciless Qin was, they started to hate Qin. Some experts started to criticize Qin, and some media outlets started to report this matter. They added fuel to the fire, saying that they wanted to uphold justice for Great Shun. Some ignorant people started to criticize Qin, and more people criticized and cursed at Great Shun. However, not a single faction dared to make a single sound, and they were as silent as a lake. They knew that if they dared to make a sound and offend Qin, they would suffer the same fate as Great Shun. This matter would be recorded in the history books of later generations. Qin Huangfu. Cruel, merciless, and bloodthirsty. He slaughtered 50,000 people in Great Shun and hung 5,000 or so players to death, causing the entire world to be enraged. Within a certain room, Li Mu lay on a bed with a wooden expression on his face. Great Shun had been destroyed by him, and his status as the next family leader had been taken away by a few of his family's elders. Now, his status had plummeted, and he had become a sinner in his family. If it wasn't for the fact that he still had a trace of Emperor's fate on him, he would have long since been killed by his family's people. Qin. Thinking of Qin, Li Mu's expression became savage as he roared. He hated Qin to the core, and even though Great Shun's legacy was gone, as long as he didn't die, he still had a chance. As long as he had that chance, he would be able to rise again. Right now, Li Mu only had a single thought, which was to destroy Qin and slaughter all of Qin's people. After returning to the Heaven-Awakened world, Zhao Fu didn't know about any of this. Even if he did, he would just laugh in disdain. After hanging so many players to death, Zhao Fu and the other 4 families had wanted to destroy the Xia family and Yu family, who had sided with Great Shun. These 2 families were relatively weak, and their villages were advanced villages. They had 6,000 indigenous residents and 8,000 players, which amounted to 14,000 people in total. To Qin, 14,000 people would be incredibly easy to deal with. After all, Qin now had 37,000 soldiers in Green Apricot. Even though the Xia family and Yu family had a combined population of 28,000 people, they could deal with them one by one. They would first destroy the Xia family, then the Yu family. At the same time, it was time for the other 4 families to express their stance. Zhao Fu wanted each family to send out 5,000 soldiers, which put the 4 families in a difficult position. After all, 5,000 soldiers was 90% of their forces. Of course, the 4 families weren't willing to send out so many soldiers at once. However, the powerful Great Shun had just been destroyed. How could they win? Looking at Zhao Fu and his powerful soldiers, if they didn't agree, they might become Zhao Fu's next target. As such, they could only bitterly agree. Chapter 269. This place had become a ruined village, and the fences had been destroyed. The village hall and a few other buildings had disappeared, and some of the houses had collapsed. It seemed that the city heart had been relocated. Who would have thought? The Xia family ran quite quickly, Zhao Fu muttered to himself in surprise. The commotion from attacking the Great Shun town was simply too great. As people from large families, they had some legacies, so it was impossible for them not to know what had happened in Great Shun. When they heard the cry in the distance, the Xia family and Yu family's faces became pale, and they understood that it was the Great Ming dynasty that had destroyed Great Shun. When they thought about how they had betrayed Zhao Fu, and given how weak their families were, they knew that they would be the next to be destroyed by Zhao Fu. As such, they decided to relocate their villages overnight. Although they would have to pay a price to relocate their villages, it wouldn't be as great as relocating their legacies. This time, Zhao Fu had come up empty-handed. However, he had made unexpected gains. There were still roughly 5,000 people and a large amount of resources left. However, there wasn't much time, and it was impossible for the Xia family and Yu family to take away so many people. If they did, it was possible that Zhao Fu would catch up to them, and they would be completely annihilated. As such, they could only take away some people with high grades and important resources. The Xia family and Yu family had wanted to let those people run away or burn them. Even if they destroyed them, they didn't want to leave anything for Zhao Fu. However, after thinking about it, apart from their villages, they also had many shops in main cities, which could provide them with many benefits. They had developed in Green Apricot for so long, and they couldn't bear to give up on everything. Moreover, they didn't have the ability to go to other regions, so they could only hide in a hidden place and didn't even dare to go to main cities. Now that Green Apricot was under Zhao Fu's control, going to a main city would be equivalent to committing suicide. Finally, thinking about the resources and people they couldn't take away, they decided to make a deal with Zhao Fu. When Zhao Fu brought 50,000 soldiers to the Xia family's village, he found that the Xia family's people were already waiting for him. At that moment, a young man walked out from the crowd and nervously yelled, "Everyone, please don't attack. I have something to discuss with young Master Zhu, a disciple of my Xia family who has stayed here." Hearing this, Zhao Fu felt a bit confused and ordered people to bring the young man to him. The young man was brought in front of Zhao Fu. Looking at the black-cloaked Zhao Fu, he gave him a friendly smile and said, "Young Master Zhu, first of all, on behalf of the Xia family, I would like to apologize to you. We don't expect you to forgive us, but you must believe that we have our own difficulties. Moreover, we feel deeply regretful and apologetic, so we've given all of our people and resources to young Master Zhu. We hope that you can forgive us." Zhao Fu understood the Xia clan's intentions. No wonder there were still so many people waiting for their arrival. Accepting this, Zhao Fu would not be able to attack the Xia clan. However, now that he thought about it, it was unlikely that he would be able to catch up with the Xia clan who had escaped. It was not bad to gain 5,000 people without any losses. Now that the Xia clan had gone through this, they were on the verge of death and had been reduced to an ordinary force. They were no longer a threat. Zhao Fu thought for a moment before nodding and saying, "I can accept your Xia clan's apology, but this is your last chance." The young man let out a sigh of relief. The matter had finally been resolved. He patted his chest and promised, "Young Master Zhu, don't worry. There won't be a next time." Zhao Fu did not feel anything. Right now, he did not trust anyone. If he had the chance, he would still destroy the Xia clan. The four clans were quite disappointed. They had thought that they would obtain all sorts of benefits from bringing a large number of soldiers to divide up the Xia clan, but they had not obtained anything at all. After receiving these 5,000 people, Zhao Fu brought some people to the Yu clan, and the situation was the same. They did not suffer any losses and obtained another 5,000 people, making them 10,000 in total. As for the resources, Zhao Fu generously distributed them to the four clans. He then casually said, "The Xia and Yu clans are quite smart and know to pay the price for their mistakes." These words caused the expressions of the four people, who had just received a large amount of resources, to freeze. They had also betrayed Zhao Fu. The scene immediately fell silent. Zhao Fu didn't say anything, and neither did the four of them. The atmosphere became quite awkward. The Li family's family leader felt quite troubled, and in the end, he sighed and said, "The Li family is willing to pay the price for our previous actions. We will give 1,000 people to young Master Zhu, and we hope that young Master Zhu can accept our apology." After the Li family's family leader expressed his stance, the three other family leaders could only express their willingness to give 1,000 people as the price for their betrayal. Zhao Fu couldn't make a move against the four clans right now, but extorting 4,000 people wasn't bad either. As such, he gave the four clans some benefits and expressed that they would receive some benefits in the system main cities in the future. Right now, apart from the system factions, only the four clans had the ability to resist. Everyone else had no power at all, so Green Apricot was now in Qin's bag. Zhao Fu took the 3,000 people he had obtained from conquering Great Shun, the 10,000 people from the Xia and Yu families, and the 4,000 people from the four clans, for a total of 17,000 people, and he returned to the Great Shun town. Zhao Fu went to the Great Shun town hall. Because Great Shun's nation legacy and fate had been devoured by Qin, the Great Shun town's legacy stone was only a special stone. If Zhao Fu chose to relocate it, its grade wouldn't drop. Because this place's location had definitely been exposed, Zhao Fu wouldn't leave too many soldiers in Green Apricot. After all, Green Apricot didn't have much power to stop Qin, so he had to relocate the Great Shun town. Zhao Fu placed his hand on the floating cube and chose to relocate it. System announcement. You have obtained 160,000 EXP. System announcement. Your intermediate town has leveled up to an advanced town. System announcement. A historical figure slumbering within Qin's legacy has awakened. Suddenly, when he heard this system announcement, Zhao Fu was delighted. He first sent Qin's soldiers and the residents back to Qin City in batches, and Zhao Fu immediately went to check on the leveled-up Qin town. Village name: Qin Town, legendary level. Advanced village area: 300 square kilometers. Village territory: 6,180 square kilometers. Popular support: 85. Special stats: territory crop output plus 100%, territory crop growth time minus 100%, population limit plus 70%, residence stats randomly plus 6, soldiers stats plus 7%, population attraction plus 80%, high-grade attraction plus 80%. Subsidiary village limit: 282. Chapter 270. The town stats were the same as before, so Zhao Fu didn't say much. Zhao Fu looked at Qin Town's 3 buildings that had also leveled up. Heaven Prayer Platform: a special building of a kingdom's legacy. It can be leveled up with a village. Special stats: resistance to natural disasters plus 65%, chance of spawning S-grade or above villagers plus 35%. Earth Temple, Level 2. Description: contains a trace of godly power that can protect a region of land. The more incense there is, the more the Earth Temple's level and stats will be increased. Current stats: crop growth time minus 30%, crop output plus 30%, resistance to natural disasters plus 15%. City God Temple, Level 1 grade. Legendary. Description: it contains a trace of divine power and can protect residents. It requires sacrifices of incense, and the more incense there is, the more it can level up. All evil creatures that step within the territory of the City God Temple will be suppressed by the City God Temple, and their strength will be reduced by 60%. The residents of the City God Temple will receive powerful protection and will be immune to evil and darkness power. The Earth Temple and City God Temple's stats had all been increased, but this wasn't too important, as they hadn't increased by much. What made Zhao Fu happy was that he now had 2 Heaven Prayer Platforms. If the 2 Heaven Prayer Platform stats were added together, they would become incredibly powerful. Zhao Fu was quite concerned about the natural disasters stats, because if there were any terrifying natural disasters in the future, such as a 100-year drought or a flood, they would be unable to harvest anything. That would be a true disaster, and many people had died of starvation in ancient times. Resistance to natural disasters was incredibly important, and many kingdoms in history had fallen to natural disasters. When the residents had no food and were about to go crazy from hunger, they would definitely rebel. The higher the natural disasters stats were, the greater their resistance to natural disasters would be, and the less suffering they would have to face. The Great Shun Town had been rebuilt by Zhao Fu, and it was 300 kilometers away from Qin Town. Because the Great Shun Town could be developed into a major city, it needed some space to develop. However, even though the Great Shun Town could be leveled up, because its legacy had been plundered by Qin Town, the other special buildings wouldn't be leveled up. For example, the Heaven Prayer Platforms wouldn't be leveled up, which was quite a pity. As for the 30 or so villages around the Great Shun Town, Zhao Fu had relocated all of them back. He had only obtained a small portion of the EXP and no achievement points, and Zhao Fu had placed them in the regions that he had set up. Now, Qin Town had 210 villages, and just the spawn rate was 1,260 people per day. If they added on the people they purchased from the various regions, Great Qin's population would increase by 6,000 or so people per day. If they added on conquering other regions, Great Qin's population would grow at a shocking rate. Finally, Zhao Fu came to the origin. Before, there had been a system announcement that a historical figure had awakened. Every time this happened, Zhao Fu felt quite excited and guessed that it was that historical figure. A golden light shot out from the origin as, and a of. A youth as Zhao Fu looked as he looked like, and a youth as a Fu, a Zhao as he Fu had as he thought about it. After the youth appeared, his eyes regained their light, and he looked at Zhao Fu. He immediately half-knelt and respectfully called out, "Your Majesty!" Name, Meng Tian. Grade, SS. Title, None. Profession, General. Profession effects, can hold 2 military professions. Achievement points, Commoner 100. Race, Human. Age, 22. 100. Loyalty, 100. Stats, Strength, 10. Intelligence, 8. Constitution, 8. Agility, 8. Cultivation, Stage 0. Cultivation technique, none. Skills, none. Equipment, coarse cloth clothes, cloth shoes, coarse cloth pants. Meng Tian was a famous general from Qin Shi Huang's era. He had once conquered the kingdom of Qi and led 300,000 soldiers to defend the Great Wall of Qi, deterring the Xiongnu from heading south to herd horses and preventing soldiers from shooting arrows. He had made countless contributions to Qin Shi Huang's unification of the 6 states. However, after Qin Shi Huang died and Hu Hai ascended to the throne, he was sentenced to death. Zhao Fu happily smiled. He had obtained another outstanding general, and he immediately said, "You may rise." After letting Meng Tian adapt to Qin Shi Huang, Zhao Fu took the corpses of Great Shun's 4 historical generals to the underground region and prepared to refine them. He wondered what special effects these corpses would have after refining them. Now that he didn't lack energy stones, Zhao Fu threw the 4 corpses onto the refining formation and activated it. The 4 corpses were lifted into the air by a formless energy, and they started to melt like snow, turning into a pool of blood that gathered at their foreheads. System announcement. These 4 corpses have general stars sealed within them. Please choose whether to refine them normally or to refine them specially. If you choose to refine them normally, you will obtain 4 grade orbs corresponding to your grade. If you choose to refine them specially, the 4 corpses' grade orbs and general stars will be fused together. Zhao Fu couldn't help but smile. He had never thought that the corpses of historical generals would have such effects. As for general stars, not all generals had general stars. Only generals with the power to control the situation of the world had the right to have 13 general stars. Ordinary generals mainly had the 36 heavenly spirit stars or the 72 earthly fiend stars. Even though they were all general stars, they weren't as powerful as the 13 general stars, and their methods were different. When the 13 general stars were born, abnormal signs would appear, and their corresponding general stars would descend. This showed how powerful the 13 general stars were. However, the heavenly spirit stars and earthly fiend stars were different. Even though some general stars were born with them, most of them were formed after birth. It was possible for an ordinary person to walk the path of a general through some sort of fate, resulting in a general star. Zhao Fu's subordinates were most likely Bai Qi, Wang Jian, and Wei Liao, the 13 general stars, but the others were most likely heavenly spirit stars and earthly fiends. The system announcement stated that not only could he fuse the 4 corpses' grade orbs together, but he could also fuse their sealed general stars, which was quite surprising. Of the 2 options given by the Heaven and Earth refining formation, Zhao Fu would definitely choose the second option. A blood-red orb appeared on each of the 4 corpses' foreheads and fused together, giving off a bright blood-red light before forming a pearl-sized, irregular blood-red crystal. Zhao Fu stopped the magic formation, and the 4 corpses fell to the ground with a bang. The blood-red crystal floated in the air, and Zhao Fu walked over to take a look. Innate Talent Blood Crystal. After using this item, not only can it greatly increase one's grade, but it can also obtain general stars and can be fused with. The innate talent blood crystal's effects were not the same as the grade orbs, which could directly increase one's grade. The system announcement stated that it could greatly increase one's grade, and it didn't seem as good as the previous one, but the key was how much it could increase one's grade. Chapter 271. Zhao Fu didn't know how much the grade would increase, but there was a detailed description of the general stars. Niu Jingxing's corpse was a heavenly spirit general star, while the other 3 were earthly spirit general stars. 3 earthly spirit corpses could form a heavenly spirit general star, and this innate talent blood crystal had already fused with 2 heavenly spirit corpses. If it was given to someone without a general star, they would only obtain a heavenly spirit general star. However, if it was given to someone with a heavenly spirit general star, they might awaken one of the 13 general stars. This was because 3 heavenly spirit stars could fuse into a general star. Zhao Fu now understood why the innate talent blood crystal could be fused again. As long as he fused with another heavenly spirit star and gave it to someone without a general star, they would obtain a general star. However, Zhao Fu didn't plan on fusing with it because Meng Tian was most likely a heavenly spirit general star. Giving it to her would save a heavenly spirit corpse. At the same time, what shocked Zhao Fu was that 3 general stars could fuse into a weak king's star, 3 king's stars could fuse into a weak emperor's star, and 3 emperor's stars could fuse into a weak emperor's star. Seeing this, Zhao Fu couldn't help but feel shocked that a king's star could be obtained. Even though it was weak and couldn't compare to a proper king's star, it could allow an ordinary person to instantly obtain an emperor's fate. This heaven and earth refining formations effects truly shocked Zhao Fu. As expected from one of the 6 great heaven-defying magic formations, Zhao Fu couldn't help but feel admiration. However, this was only one of the 6 great heaven-defying magic formations. What were the other 5? Zhao Fu didn't know, and he didn't know if he would have the chance to see them in the future. The other 5 formations' abilities were definitely quite terrifying. Obtaining this heaven and earth refining formation was definitely the greatest opportunity of his life. When Zhao Fu thought of that, he couldn't help but feel excited and happy. After returning to Qin Town, Zhao Fu called Meng Tian to his side. By now, Meng Tian had a simple look at Qin Town and heard about Qin Town's current situation from others. Meng Tian was quite happy that Qin Town was developing like this, and for those who were loyal to Qin Town, she felt quite gratified. Your Highness! Meng Tian came to Zhao Fu's side. Aside from respect, there was also a hint of a smile on her face as she cupped her hands. Zhao Fu smiled and handed the innate talent blood crystal to Meng Tian so that he could use it. Meng Tian initially wanted to decline. He had only just awakened from the legacy and hadn't obtained any merit points, so how could he use such a precious item? However, under Zhao Fu's insistence, he still used it. The blood-red crystal gave off a brilliant blood-red light and fused into Meng Tian's chest, causing her body to be covered by a blood-red light. After a while, the blood-red light receded, and Zhao Fu checked Meng Tian's information again. She had already become an SSS rank, which made Zhao Fu pleasantly surprised. However, because Meng Tian's general star had been sealed, she did not know what had happened to it. Only by obtaining a general armament or when the real world was devoured would she know. At that moment, a soldier came up to report that something had happened in North Nam. Zhao Fu felt quite startled and asked him to explain in detail. After the first stage of the chaotic world had begun, the situation in the Heaven-Awakened world had become even more chaotic. The chaotic world stone steel's appearance encouraged people to fight, so people started to fight as well. Lords no longer had friendships with each other, and they instead fought and killed each other. The boundary regions, which were already quite chaotic, became even more chaotic after the chaotic world stone steel's appearance. Compared to villages in the wilderness, player villages were easier to find and take down. Many players set their sights on player villages. Because there was enmity between the two sides, they attacked each other's villages. At first, it was the Vietnamese people. 10,000 or so players snuck over to the Chinese side and found targets before taking advantage of the night to take down 20 or so player villages. They hung the people they killed at the gates of the villages and used blood to write things like Chinese dogs and Chinese people were trash. They were incredibly arrogant and domineering. After making so many gains, the Vietnamese people went back to show off their achievements, causing the Vietnamese people to cheer and plan to try a few more times. The Chinese side was furious to the point that their lungs were about to explode, and a large number of players ran over to take revenge. Both sides started to fight, which became more and more intense. Almost everyone on both sides participated, and at least 10,000 or so people died every day. If it wasn't for the fact that players were continuously respawning, there wouldn't have been many people left in North Nam by now. In fact, this even affected the system main cities. At first, 1,000 or so Chinese players chased 100 or so Vietnamese players to the side of a system main city, which belonged to the Vietnamese side. 100 or so city guards used the excuse that fighting was forbidden within the system main city to stop the 1,000 or so Chinese players. The Vietnamese players who had escaped laughed and taunted the city guards, saying that they wanted to continue fighting if they had the gut. Before, the Vietnamese players had run over to the Chinese side and killed many people, enraging the 1,000 or so Chinese players, and they had chased them all the way here. Now, they were stopped by the system main city guards and provoked by the Vietnamese players. In the end, the 1,000 or so Chinese players couldn't take it anymore. Boundary regions were quite chaotic, but it wasn't without its benefits. First, the players had more battle experience than in other regions, and they had all sorts of rewards, equipment, skills, and cultivations. What's more, they had 1,000 or so people. As such, they attacked the 100 or so city guards in front of them. These system main city guards looked down on the Chinese players, and most of the players had endured it for a long time. However, because of the massive difference in strength, they had been able to endure it. Now, however, they had finally exploded out. The results of the battle were incredibly bitter. Of the 1,000 or so Chinese players, only 320 were left, while the system main city guards and the 100 or so Vietnamese players had all died. After this happened, the Vietnamese system main cities were infuriated and forbade the Chinese players from entering their system main cities. They slaughtered the Chinese players who were still in the Vietnamese system main cities, and they gave out quests that stated that anyone who killed Chinese players would receive rewards. Moreover, there were no restrictions on players. Anyone who killed Chinese players would receive rewards. This made the Chinese system main cities incredibly furious, and they also gave out quests that stated that anyone who killed Vietnamese players would receive reward. Since the system main cities on both sides were like this, the battles between the players on both sides became even more intense, and the factions on both sides continuously clashed. After listening to the soldier's explanation, Zhao Fu thought about how to obtain a large number of Stage 1 corpses, as well as how the Vietnamese Guard had become the faction that the Vietnamese people worshipped. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.